7:36, so let's get settled in. Okay, we're going to get started here. FairTV and WebEx ready? Okay, welcome everybody to the March 20th RTM committee meetings. Let's stand for the pledge, please. Okay, thank you. First up tonight on our agenda is the UPSEU number 445 DPWCBA. We have HR Director Kathleen Simpson here tonight. That mic, I think it's on the top. I think you just, top, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, is it on? Great. Is it on now? Yes, okay. All right, and a lot of confidence in me with the microphone anyway. So, thank you very much. I'm pleased to announce that as the HR Director, we were able to get, as a partnership with the Public Works Union, a contract. This one took almost 3 years because of COVID and delays, and we worked really hard with me being a new HR Director. We got the services of a mediator, and within that time, we were able to get to a contract. So I think you got a package ahead of time, and I just go over the highlights. One of the things that we looked at was the union dues. There's new laws on Janus, so we wanted to update that to comply with the law, and that's for the payroll deductions. One of the things in an article, both the probationary employees and the for vacation and also for benefits, there used to be a delay, and they had to wait 3 months to even get benefits. And so we, the union and management thought that it'd be much better for recruitment and retention of employees if we could offer them to have insurance coverage when they started working as opposed to having to wait. And and also they would have their ability to utilize their vacation and sick leave benefits after 3 months. There was a much longer wait before, and this way, balance, work-life balance, trying to recruit employees, particularly since these employees were physically very hard too. And, we want to make sure that they're not they get a break. The wages, the increases, section 8.02 and your packet here, there is, we're going back to 2020. So the first year, 21, was 2.25%. And then the 22, 23, and 24 thereafter is a 2.5%. And this contract does go through 2024. And we're also going to make retro payments separately, which is not unusual. But they also, one thing that we did discuss at length was providing a one-time stipend of $750 to the members to acknowledge their service through the pandemic, as well as the resulting delay of the contract settlement. They were very patient, and they were very good partners with the town and with me as an HR director, and that we really wanted to make sure that that they were recognized for their service to the town through the pandemic particularly. The cost associated is in your packet. The vacation we went under about the life balance, trying to not have people wait so long to take vacation when they start. And we also, with health and welfare benefits, the parties agreed to maintain the cost share contribution through June 30th, 2023. And there's an increase of 15.5% effective July 1st, 2023. The retirement plan, there was a lot of discussion in our meetings and some good discussion about having concepts and ideas about pension and retirement plans. And we came to the conclusion that would work, that we could be discussed at quarterly labor management committee meetings, and ideas and concepts could be brought to the CFO as far as some thoughts about pension. And the big one for us with the union as well was job classifications and evaluations, and that's in the section 21.01. It's long overdue that the parties need to do a review of the bargaining unit classifications and compensation structure. And the overall goals of the review would include ensuring market and internal structure alignment. To simplify the classification structure right now, it's a lot of, if you look at the contract, there's a lot of different classifications that probably are in the same families and need to be looked at that way. I want us to identify paths for career progression, which is very important for retention, and address recruitment and retention needs, and review minimum qualifications. And we're looking at what are the things that we also discussed, which is very important, and it's important whenever the THEA contract as well, was increasing opportunities for diversification and inclusion. And one of the important pieces of that, of course, is job classification and career advancement. And the effective date will be 4 years, as mentioned. And those are the highlights of what we put.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Put together.
Any questions from the body? Representative Iacone? Oh, sorry, Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. Is Jared on the line? Yes. Jared, to you, I just see in the page 2 of the memo, 21, 22, 23, all the cumulative, the retros. You're comfortable we have enough in contingency for all that?
Hey, Ed, thanks very much for the question. Yes, I'm comfortable that what was put in for a contingency is sufficient to cover that. Yep.
Thank you, Representative Bateson. Representative Iacone.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to the HR Director, could you elaborate a little bit when you say there was a discussion that you want to have on those that are in the pension and what?
Oh, it was more that there's a lot of the discussion was around recruitment and retention, and some talking about the defined pension versus the 401A, and what if anything can you do in terms of increasing contributions and getting people, sometimes also awareness of, having employees who on board, you're young, you don't think about it, and then you don't think about what that means down the line as you go forward. So it was more of we could not get to all these things in the short period of time in negotiation. So we thought it'd be a good subject for labor management going forward. So there's nothing really detailed except that
You're looking to encourage newer members to sign into the 401A. Is that
they already have to, but the issue is some of the issues about that and what that means, and what people should be contributing, and what thoughts going forward to help make that a viable option for people coming into Fairfield, because some places still have a defined pension, and we have to compete with that.
Understood. Thank you. I do want to say I think this is a fair contract, and I thank you and the local for putting it together. I don't have any issues with it. I'm actually pleased to see that they're getting the stipend for what happened during COVID. It was certainly well earned. Um, the only comment I have, and it's just about union negotiations in general, it's not specific to DPW, but as you're negotiating these things more moving forward, a main concern of mine has always been contribution to medical. And I don't personally have an issue paying people more in salary as long as they are contributing more in medical. So I know you're going to have to start this whole round all over again, but that's an unsustainable cost that everyone is looking at. And I think we need to be wary of that. And I know that that needs to be negotiated. And I'm not unrealistic that we're going to have to pay more in salary in order to achieve that. And I think that's an important thing to remember. And just my last question is there still a no layoff clause in this contract?
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Iacono. Any other members of the body? Anybody that's on WebEx, you could put it in the chat if you have a question. Representative Pastilli.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. Sharon Pastilli, District 3. So I just had one question about how the vacation works. So if someone joins on August 1st, do they receive pro rata vacation immediately? And then by next July 1, then they receive what they would get in a full year?
That is a good question. It was before, what happens is within, I'm going to go to the section here, sorry, so I'm clear. So with the contract language that we just negotiated, the employees go receive paid vacation. That's on page 10 of the proposed CBA. So under 1 year, they get 1 working day for each month's service up to a maximum of 10 working days. So they do get a pro rata there, but they can start taking their pro rata now, not having to wait 6 months or longer. So yes, when you're looking at that, when they start, the clock starts ticking with giving their accruals.
Right, great, thank you. And then in terms of the medical contribution, have we benchmarked the contribution required by Fairfield compared to other DPW contracts in surrounding towns?
That's a very good question too. Our benefits manager, Megan Brandt, is very aware of that. And one of the things that, yes, we are looking at obviously we have to, and we're looking at various other towns and municipalities. Some of them have the state plan, but and looking at options. One of the things that's unique about, unfortunately, contract negotiations, some negotiations, sometimes, it ends up, because you're trying to get to yes, that we don't get, when we look at what we want to be, sometimes you have to be less, as you just mentioned too, with contract negotiations. So we're aware of that. And I can only say that more on that, and I appreciate the comment about the contributions and healthcare costs.
Yeah, it's like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then one other comment I have is I do agree with the immediate eligibility of medical. I haven't, like I work more in the corporate world, but I haven't seen like delayed start of medical anymore. So I think that that's good that they're immediately eligible for medical. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pastilli. Any other members of the body? Representative Gerber.
Hi, Bill Gerber, District 2. I think it's probably in here, but when talking about job classifications and looking at the grievances, just made me think of the job descriptions that we talked a lot about a few years ago, and I was just wondering sort of the status of do all the jobs in DPW currently have updated job descriptions?
No, they don't. That's one of the reasons we want to get this done, a study. Our goals, and one of the things we need to play catch up with is to get these job classifications up to date. And the great thing about working with the union on that, we're going to do it together in a classification study. So I'm looking forward to that because it's a very important piece of HR. And we have a lot of work to do. We're rolling up our sleeves with it, but I think it'll be I know it's going to be very beneficial.
Right. So the employee service report there's one in the contract, or
I'm sorry,
you have an annual review process with the employees, right?
there is one, and
Yeah.
it needs to be better implemented,
Okay.
and training, it needs to be more consistently used. And it does go with merit and with job descriptions. That's part of the classification study too as well.
Okay. So
So
that's sort
that's
of-
still there. That is still there, and that's important.
right. Right. So this will be worked on over the coming year or so.
Yes, correct. And that,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Gerber. Any other questions from the body? Representative Parham?
Cindy Parham, District 4. The 2 weeks off through year 5, is that standard for DPW departments in the area for vacation?
I can tell you that our vacation is, from my experience and looking at things, it's pretty standard. Where it's and competitive with other municipalities and towns.
Okay. It seems like, I mean, I haven't researched all the
Yeah.
other departments, but is that true across the board for most positions?
I can say maybe there's more in some municipalities, but it's average. I can't say right off the top of my head right now, but I can tell you that it's not out of line.
Okay, because it says like year 1 through 5, and then it says year 5 through 10.
Yeah.
So you have to be here 5 complete years before you can get 3 weeks, 15 days?
That's right. That is actually not unusual in contracts for, as you stay longer, it's kind of like the carrot is you get more vacation time and also rewarding in a sense of longevity as you go along.
If someone transfers from another town, would they have seniority like for the years they've worked in other towns?
No, they would have to start fresh here
Okay.
unless, it's not yes, for this contract, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I think your second question was concerning, is this consistent across all the other contracts in our town?
It is.
Thank you. Any other question, Representative Gerber?
Yeah. Bill Gerber, District 2. The former policy of waiting 3 months before you started insurance coverage, what was the reason for that in the past?
Historically, I don't know. It's a good question. I think that it was part of the probationary period. I'm just guessing. But I know what I'm going to find out and get back to you on that.
Okay. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
assumed maybe
Yeah.
it was like making sure there aren't pre-existing conditions or something.
That could have been it. I'm also thinking it also tied into wait until you become a full employee before we give you anything.
But starting, if there is a pre-existing condition, just starting insurance coverage right away doesn't really impact your ability to sort of manage I mean, they're still in a probationary period, right?
They are, yes. It's just that it's kind of it's a retention thing, and I think it's also the right thing to do for employees. But also, a lot of these questions on a pre-existing condition, they do have to go through the background check, including, they have to go through a more pre-employment screening. So for the position, so I don't know if you can always weed those out.
Right.
You know,
Thank you.
but
Thank you, Representative Gerber. Any other questions from the body? I just had one quick question, and it goes back to the first question that Representative Bateson had asked about the back pay. Are there any tax implications for the employees when they get that pay? Is it a lump sum payment on whatever date after this contract gets approved by the union?
Well, they're getting retroactive pay for, in separate checks. So whatever that would be each year, that tax will be, the tax liability will be taken out of that year. So it won't be all at once. It's going to be in separate retroactive checks.
So they get a check per year, calendar year, 21, 22, 23.
Correct.
Okay. But it's still like a lump sum payment. I know when you get a bonus, you get taxed at a different level than,
No, I need to turn my phone. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
you want to go on mute, please, on WebEx? Thank you.
Yeah, it will still be, it'll be taken out of that year. Yes, like a lump sum. You're right.
Yeah, so they don't get taxed at a higher rate because it's a lump sum payment, right?
Well, I don't, I'm the wrong person to ask about all the tax liability, but I do understand it's going to come out of that one, each, whatever that liability is for that lump sum payment that's what it's going to end up being.
I mean, I would expect that they get taxed at the same rate as a normal paycheck,
They should.
but you don't know.
I don't want to give you an answer I'm not sure
Okay.
of.
Can
I
you get
just
back
want
to
to do
me
the
on that?
payroll.
Just
Yes,
if we can, thank you.
yes, I can.
Representative Bastilli?
I could also defer to Jared or if Frank are on the call too for that question as well. In finance, on the tax liability, I don't know if they're,
Yeah, so we can get back to you for sure, but I think there's no, I'll say there's no different treatment for this income. If it were significant enough to push
Yeah.
them over a threshold, then their rate might go up. But I think it would be on an individual filing basis.
Okay, well, if you can just get back to me on that, because, it would be unfair to get taxed at a higher rate for income that they earned over the last 2 3/4 years. Representative Iacona.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, just on that point, though, it's in the contract. I read it. We
Yes.
negotiated this. So this is what they wanted or somebody wanted, and it's been settled. So the issue's done. They asked for separate checks, and separate checks are being given, correct?
that's correct.
Thank you.
Yep, that's correct, but that's not my question. My question is they get taxed at a higher rate because they're getting a lump sum payment, so. And I'd like to know the answer.
Mm.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and appreciate your time and your attention. And I'm not going to touch this mic right now.
No, just leave it on. It's going to get used some more tonight. Next up, we have the Yard Waste Facility Agreement, Attorney Jim Baldwin and Mr. John Cattell.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? The reason we're before you tonight and we didn't come to you earlier is sorry? Oh, okay. The reason, how's that? All right. The reason we're here is because this agreement is an extension of a prior agreement that was first approved or signed and executed in 2017. When that happened, when I came before this body for the January lease reports, I included this property in that report, and it was brought to my attention that it deals with real property. And while that raises the question of whether it should have been in my lease report in January, the real question came down to me as to whether or not this body had previously approved the agreement, which stipulated that there could be a 5-year renewal of the agreement on an annual basis at the unfettered discretion of the town. We believed at the time that we were executing the agreement and the right of the town to extend the lease period accordingly. But then it was brought to my attention by the town clerk that this body, in fact, never did review this agreement, and it never came before the body. So when I learned that information, I thought it was necessary and appropriate to come before you and seek your formal approval of this agreement. The extension is a twist of the original insofar as the company, Denali, has asked for a firm 5-year extension. And along with that came the proposition that they would buy a scale, a brand new scale for the town, and the town would own that scale at the expiration of the additional 5 years. The original agreement stipulated that the town would purchase that scale from them at the expiration of the term. So it seemed like a very good deal to the administration. And Mr. Cattell, who's with me here now, who can probably explain to you further about the details of the proposed amended lease that is now before you, including the biofuel
Biofilter.
provisions.
Biocompost, solid
Yeah.
compost, biosolids.
Right. So that's why we're before you and why we're looking for your formal approval. But I'll let John explain in more detail if you have any questions about the actual terms of the agreement itself and the operations of the facility.
So Denali's been operating it since 2019. The actual contract went to Harvester New England back in 2017, then was assigned to Denali in 2019. For the past 2 years that I've been here working with them, they've been very cooperative. They meet the town's needs. I haven't had any issues or problems with them. I would normally continue to the 1-year extension with them. But when they offered up purchasing the scale for the town, it made sense to us that to go down that path and go through and reissue the agreement with the 5-year extension.
Okay, thank you both. Any questions from the body? Representative Georgiadis?
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Welcome, both of you. 2 questions. What's the value of the scale that they'll be donating to the town after the 5 years is completed?
Approximately 80,000.
Thank you. My other question, and maybe I should have remembered this from the previous contract discussion. In the past, and I don't think it was Denali, in the fall, there's a lot of turnover of compost when you're something caught on fire. If we agree to the 5-year terms, is there anything written in there? A lot of my constituents live around there. The smell can get really bad, especially when it catches on fire. Then it generates smoke. And we have to make sure that all of those things that impact my constituents, District 9, in the surrounding neighborhoods, do not have to put up with that. So is there something in this contract where we can,
Yes.
make sure that they do not make the residents suffer?
Yes.
Can you explain that to me?
They are responsible for odor control. They are responsible for maintaining the temperatures of the piles so that they don't catch on fire. They still have to operate under the conditions of the contract. If they fail to do that, then we still have the ability to terminate them if they're failing to uphold their.
So are there fines or just
There-
termination?
There are fines.
There are fines.
There are fines
And
involved.
they escalate 1 time, 2 time, 3 time?
I believe it's for each instance after, in one case, after a warning. But if it's a fire, I believe that it's automatic.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, and as far as everything's only as good as enforcement, you guys are pretty confident that you can enforce, make sure that the smell and all these things in the contract are enforced so that the neighbors don't have to endure things like they're still enduring with the digester.
That's a whole nother topic.
I know, we'll talk to you later this week about that, but there's an enforcement
Yes.
process
Yes.
and you're confident in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Representative Carson?
Laura Carson, D4. Drew, you just said it'll be donated back to the town, the scale? It says here it'll be sold back to the town.
That's the
That's
old,
the old one?
that's the old
Oh, I'm
contract.
reading the old one. So
Right.
it's going to be donated.
The
for
new
sure.
one will go to the town. The
Okay,
town
thank
will
you for
own
the
it.
clarification.
Thank you, Representative Carson. Representative Myers?
Jim Myers, District 8. Who's responsible for maintaining the roadways in that area where it leads up to the scales and off the scale, and then where residents drop off? Because that can become very
That would
muddy.
be their operation. Within the grounds of the facilities, their operation to maintain.
Thank you, Representative Myers. Anybody else? Representative Iacono?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you, the fines that are defined specifically here on page 9 for $5,000 per occurrence, those are the fines that are in the contract that we're extending.
That's correct.
Okay, so it says right here, smoldering smoke, fire emanating from mulch pile, 5,000 per occurrence, knowingly and accepting improper material, 5,000 per occurrence, failure to cease operations, causing wind-blown dust off property, $1,000 per occurrence. So it's very clearly delineated right here if you read the lease.
Yes.
Got it, thanks.
Representative Pastilli?
Sharon Pastilli, District 3. Mr. Moderator, through you to Mr. Baldwin. So which contract didn't come before us? Was it I'm looking on page 12 where it says the term of the agreement it's August 1st, 2017, but that was before the assignment that happened in 2019, right? So did we not approve the assignment of the contract? Or can you explain?
No, the assignment didn't require your approval. It was, that approval came as a matter of course pursuant to the terms of the original agreement. What didn't come before this body was the original agreement itself.
So the one that started August 1st, 2017.
That's correct. And then the Board of Selectmen approved the amendment or the extension, but unbeknownst to me, this body had never approved the original agreement.
Okay, thanks. And then do we have an audit like of all contracts that are in place so we can check and see if there are any other ones that we haven't approved that we're supposed to?
I think this is unusual, but I guess as these contracts come up that are maybe of 5 years duration or so, like this one, that we'll be sure to catch them as they come up, because I incorrectly assumed that the prior administration had brought it to the attention of this body for action.
So, but do we have a list of all of the contracts that the town is party to? Like, is there a,
Absolutely, yes. Connie Saxel maintains all those records, and I'm certain of it.
okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pastilli. Representative Vergara?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jill Vergara for District 7. Does We Care Denali subcontract out any work or services?
Not that I know about that spot there.
Okay, thank
They
you.
have other facilities throughout the state and out the country. So
Oh.
when you ask that question, I presume you're talking specifically of this location.
I am, yeah. I think someone had asked me whether, I thought they were concerned about bids that might be received related to We Care Denali. And I thought it was relevant to this.
I'm not aware of what you're talking about. But since you did ask about subcontracting, they may subcontract some of their trucking if they don't have enough where they truck to their other facilities. They may incorporate other vendors to help them truck material out or in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vergara. Representative Gerber?
Hey, Bill Gerber, District 2. My first question is, it may be for Jared, about if somebody could sort of review the plan for internal controls or the current existing internal controls where we monitor sort of the materials going into this facility so that, we can avoid sort of things like what happened with our toxic dumping in the past.
Can you clarify your question? What are you
Um,
looking for
Well,
exactly?
my understanding is that with the Phil Pyle scandal, people were sort of waved around, the official check-in and all, and it was very difficult to sort of get a handle on who was coming in and when. There were people coming off hours. Like, have we corrected to make sure that that can't happen here?
Yeah, I think I'd have to defer to either Mr. Cotel about the operation and what checks are in place for processing the material.
The material that comes in from residents as well as from the town, landscapers. It's basically, wood or leaf material that's then processed and then sent out. They bring in topsoil also for sale to residents and landscapers. So it's something that's coming in and going out also. As far as testing from our biosolids, which comes from our waste treatment plant, we test the town, WPCF tests that material before it goes out.
I would also add that the terms of the contract clearly provide for, penalties and termination and liability for them processing any materials which are not appropriate under the contract. And you have to remember that they reprocess this and sell it, right, to third parties, whether they're corporations or individuals. And as such, they assume liability in the stream of that product if there's found to be any material which is inappropriate. Anyone who's ever taken their yard waste to that facility, I'm sure has been inspected by the people there, the load that you're bringing to make sure that that's not the case. So it's a mutual desire on their part as it is to the town not to have any such materials.
So the downstream product, there's no liability to the town if this company decides to wave people through and process, sort of toxic topsoil or something like that.
That is their responsibility, and I assure you that if something like that were to occur, we would hold them liable. And I'm sure that anyone who received those materials, while they may name the town of Fairfield as the landlord, so to speak, that ultimately the liability would rest with them, with Denali.
So there's no obligation on our part to, because I thought I saw something about like testing, that we do testing of this material, but is that right?
That's the biosolids that I was talking about there. We test that, which comes from our WPCF.
Oh, and it goes into this, so that's
goes
our
over there.
responsibility. Okay, thank you.
If I may, I also want to tell the body that I think the resolution itself is incorrect insofar as it says it provides a period of 6 years on the date expiring 2028, when in fact it should say expiring 2027. So that's something that should be corrected. That's just a Scribner's error, as they say.
So it's, says for 5 years, affected 1/1/23 through 12/31/28. So that should be 12/31/27.
Correct.
Okay. And the expiration date of 12/31/27.
That's correct.
Mark, I had one more question.
Sure.
The value of the scale in January was quoted as 150,000. That's what I had in my notes.
Incorrect. It's approximately $80,000.
Okay. Okay. That's the starting value. That's not like a depreciated value. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerber. Representative Steele?
Jeff Steele, District 2. Just a quick question. Has the biosoliid element been part of this contract in the past? And has the revenue split of 25% of sales of compost, are they new elements or have they always been in the place?
The original contract had the operator the ability to sell the material, which is what they're doing now. Previously, when it was Harvest New England, they did not have the infrastructure for sales. So they went to a third party to do the sales. And since Denali's taken it over, they wanted to revert back to the words in the contract to allow them to do the sale portion of it via the contract. The 25% was not previously the agreement with the new harvester and the other one. It was a dollar amount, but the sales go up and down based on times a year, and therefore they're doing a shared portion of the 25%.
So that 25% was in place for the last 5 years, though, that Denali?
No, it was a dollar. It was a specific dollar amount.
Okay.
When it was with New Harvester, which Denali inherited, and did not actually, wasn't involved with the sales of it. They were involved in the processing of it, and then a third party, which was AgriSource, was the one who was actually doing the sales.
Do you have any projections on revenue of that compost going forward? Any idea?
I don't think it's under $20,000 for sure, I would say, over the course of a year.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Representative Steele. Representative Bateson?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. I'm sorry, can I get your name and who you work for again?
My name is John Cattell. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works for the town of Fairfield.
Nice to meet you. I don't think I ever met you before.
Thank you, Ed. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you, John. All right, next up, items 6 and 7, the East Trunk Wetlands Crossing. Looks like Mr. Hurley is on his own. I don't see Mr. DeVonzo here.
I'll see. You can hear me, right? The East Trunk Sewer Wetlands Crossing covers a sewer replacement from the Metro Center to Kenwood Avenue. It involves construction and inspection project costs estimated at $6.25 million. There is a $750,000 grant component from the DECD and a proposed town share of $5.5 million in bonding. The East Trunk Sewer Wetlands Crossing will replace approximately 311 linear feet of existing 33-inch sanitary sewer pipe with a new 36-inch reinforced concrete pipe along the same alignment within an embankment across Ash Creek, inlet wetlands adjacent to the Metro Center. This was proposed by the town's consultant, D&B Engineers. The project will reduce inflow and infiltration, reduces sewer system overflows, and will increase capacity for future development. Design services for the project were awarded to the consultant back in April 2021. The construction plans have been completed and the permits have been obtained to start construction once funding is secured and the contract is put out to bid. To replace a portion of the sewer main that carries 2/3 of the town's sewer flows to the WPCF plant, The new 36-inch line will be able to expand capacity for the Metro Center development and provide the necessary improvements to the system. The request for the construction of the sewer includes design services during construction, specialized inspections, environmental inspections, and general daily inspections. The estimate is based on the latest information from the design consultant for construction and inspection costs. And they're based on the number of days for anticipated construction, which is about 13 to 16 months. And so we use 16 months as a worst-case scenario. Cost to complete the pipe replacement will obviously depend on the actual contract bids and final field conditions. The town must hire a licensed environmental professional and perform specialized inspections throughout the project per IBC building codes and the permits. The $750,000 grant was extended and is due through December 2024, with the condition of the project being completed and closed out by then. The town share is anticipated to be $5.5 million in GO bonds, and the debt service on the bonded amount will be paid from the WPCA operating budget. The service life of the project is expected to be the 60 to 80-year range and has been listed on the waterfall chart for some time. One of the hurdles that we did have with the Board of Finance, who did approve the project, was that our initial costs were in the $2.4 to $3 million range in the beginning. And as I mentioned before, it's $6.25 million. And in the backup material should have been explanations of why the costs had gone up. Mainly the $2.4 to $3 million range was before any of the soil testing was done, and it was really just as a placeholder. After the soil tests were conducted and the final design was detailed, the consultant revised the cost estimate. And again, in the interest of time, I'll highlight some of the things why the costs had gone up. Soil conditions resulted in deeper and closer and more numerous piles than anticipated. Dewatering quantities were calculated based on the groundwater tests that were done. The longer construction duration period originally was going to be 8 months. Now it's 16 months. And so it's 16 months of construction inspection and also 16 months of 24/7 dewatering and bypass. We have to maintain 2/3 of the sanitary flow to the treatment plant while this construction is going on. So all those have added to the costs, and wetland restoration and permitting in order to meet the DEP and Army Corps of Engineer permits, and inland wetlands permits were necessary as well. Construction access, and then there was special care with the environmental liner. Location that was confirmed with deep and field investigation by town engineering and the DPW. So I'm here to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Questions from the body? Representative Bateson.
Ed Bateson, District 1. Thanks, Bill, for the presentation. You know, with this project, I always wondered why we never tackled this years ago when the Metro Center was before us. But, you know, reading all the engineering involved, I kind of think I know why.
And I agree with that.
I've always been skeptical of the numbers and the way we approach the engineering on this. I always thought that there was some viable alternatives, forced mains, you know, parallel laterals, all that kind of stuff. But I got to tell you, I think you did a good job explaining everything, why you're going this route. I think unfortunately, the best engineering for this is the most expensive in the long term. And I think you did a great job explaining the extra piles, the weight that's going to be on there, and why we have to do that. And I think at the end of the day, if we were going to try to, I know there were some proponents, I was one of them in the beginning, to try and value engineer this. I'm comfortable now with the way we're approaching it. I'm unhappy about the dollars, but, I don't think I've been happy about dollars in years, so it's just the way things go. But I think you did a good job. I'm happy with it. I'm not happy with the cost, but, you made me happy with the simple fact that it is the best approach. Thanks. Thanks for all your work on this. I know this one was difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bateson. Any other questions? Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Bill. Drew
Hello.
Georgiadis, District 9. For my own edification, the grant amount seems a bit low. Is there ever a ratio? Because 750 out of $6+ million, normally we get a much higher percentage rate with a grant. Could you give us I should know this, but I don't. Thanks.
Well, the 750,000 was based on probably the original amount, as I said, around the 2.4 to maybe $3 million range. That grant was, I think, approved in 2017 or 2018. And so it has expired many times, but right before it expired, we were able to renew it. And we kind of got the hint that this is the last time for this one. What I can say is that for the next phase, this is the one section, then there's another section coming up. We did get a $3 million grant for the the East Trunk sewer line, probably based on that we're going to be doing this portion of the project as well.
So they sort of thought this was low because you can't reapply once the grant is allocated?
That's correct. I mean, we can always look into it again, but I'm pretty sure that this being a little bit of an older project and an older grant, that money has been already allocated, if you know.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Any other questions from the body? Representative Gerber?
Hey, Bill. Bill Gerber, District 2. Quick question. Does there exist anywhere a map of the whole sewer line network with like ages of installation on them so we have a sense of the big picture?
I know there is a map of the town sewers in general, like Greenfield Hill doesn't have any sewers, so it's not shown on the map there. As far as aging of the sewers, most of the sewers were constructed either in the original when the plant, was done in the 40s and mid 50s. And then the later ones were maybe in the 60s. And unless there was a new subdivision later on, then those were the ones that were added on later. So we can kind of have a general idea. I don't think there's an age specific map, but in general, we could certainly say most of these areas, say down by the beach, were done in the 40s and the 50s. The Mill River section was done in the 1970s. So I could certainly give you kind of a ballpark figure in neighborhoods, but not specific streets. if that
Thank you.
makes sense. Sure.
Thank you, Representative Gerber. Representative Astorita?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 10. Bill, just a quick question for you. So, and I apologize if I missed it in the background information, but what is the expected useful life for a project like this?
Down, I think it was 60 to 80 years. Yep.
68, okay. And you're confident that there's enough capacity that as that area develops, you won't have to come back in like 10 or 15 years and redo something like this all over again?
Well, two things that play into that. One is the elevations of the line. If we increase the sewer pipe, then all of a sudden, we'd have to do from there all the way down sort of to the plant. What I could say though is by enlarging it 33 to 36, you do get a 15 to 20% increase and in capacity. And by it being new and updated, you don't have to maintain it as much. So again, can't always promise it, but the chances of clogging or disjointed, which sometimes reduces capacity, wouldn't be there for quite a while. So I think we're covered.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Representative Astorita.
Representative Gerber.
Yeah, while we have you here, Bill, the increased capacity of this line and future lines, I know you must have talked about this a lot recently, but does the plant actually kind of process the increased capacity, or are we going to have to add capacity to the plant?
In general, the most cost-effective way to improve capacity is to reduce the infiltration into the line. When it rains, we get a certain percentage. I don't want to quote it. I know during Hurricane Sandy, for instance, the capacity in the line had tripled the amount of water going in because there was so much infiltration everywhere. But in general, if you can control that, and I know they've had a 5-year or 5-phase program to do that. I think they're on phase 4 for that. That's a good way of increasing capacity without having to physically increase the lines, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Representative Gerber. Anybody else? Bill, I just have a question. When was the ceremonial groundbreaking over there for the development? Because I noticed that not much happened after that, and I see now that looks like they're pouring some foundation for at least one building over there. But what is the time frame of that? And do you think they're waiting for us to approve these projects to really start building over there?
My understanding is that they already have the zoning approvals and everything is going forward. They apply for each unit or each building through the building permit process. I believe, as you've mentioned, they've started that. I can certainly get you more updated information, as those departments would know a little bit more on that than I would for the time.
I just hate to see that it's being, they're not moving as fast as maybe they would like because they're waiting for us to approve this project. It's been on here for a while.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. There might be that, or it might be interest rate. I have
okay.
no idea.
Thank you. Anybody else?
If I find out, I'll let you know, though.
Thanks, Bill. All right, there's nobody on WebEx, nobody else here, so we'll thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 4 tonight, the Dish Wireless Agreement. Mr. Schmidt.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Last meeting that we had, I think it was the last one last month, there were a couple of agreements kind of similar to this. One of them was Dish putting equipment on Congress Street cell tower at the fire station there. So this one is Dish equipment being installed at 100 Reef Road at the police department. This is a 15-year contract between the town and Dish. The total revenue from the agreement over the 15 years is just over $1.5 million.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Representative Bateson.
Ed Bateson, District 1. Jared, 15 years, that seems like a long term. Is that standard for these cell tower leases?
They seem to be falling around that time, around 15 years. Some of them have a 5-year renewal. Most of them are 5-year automatic renewal. This is just a straight 15-year agreement. The market has changed over the years. And so we, as I think I mentioned to the RTM last meeting, this is something that we've hired a consultant to negotiate these deals on our behalf. And so they have really good in-depth knowledge of the market, and in particular, have a good understanding of the cell towers that the town owns and all the traffic that goes by them. the amount of volume of cell phones and other devices that connect to them. And so this was the deal that they worked with Dish.
Okay, I'm just trying to rationalize the value of the asset in my head. It sounds so. How I'm approaching this now is years ago when we would deal with these, we would go 5-year options because it was a developing industry. So now it seems like it's more of a mature industry where it's getting there. So you feel these industry experts feel more confident in extending the terms of the lease, or that's just the way it's going now?
Yeah, I think they're definitely, it is definitely matured. If you look at even some of the older contracts, you'll see it in the escalators that are in there. Those have changed. They've gone down a lot. At the same time, I think, when we get these requests, when I first came in, I was getting requests for either additional equipment from an existing carrier or new equipment from a new provider, new carrier. The dollar amounts that they were initially offering were very minimal. Whatever, $200 a month, a good amount of equipment. And now those amounts are, we negotiate dollars that are many times. But just the consultant of an indication of the industry.
Well, Jared, maybe it can help. No, you don't live in Fairfield, so it's not going to help with your connection. You're choppy.
I think I got some of that.
About that. Can I try to clear? Is it better now?
Well,
is there any part that you didn't get?
Yeah, all of it.
Okay. I can try to connect from my phone if you give me a minute.
No, Jared, I'm good. I got the gist of what you were saying.
Yeah, I think we're okay. All right. Sorry. Anybody else have questions for Jared? Representative Astorita.
Yeah, Ken Astorita, District 10. How you doing, Jared? Just a quick question, kind of follow on what Ed said. And again, I don't know the economics of this industry and what the competitive pressures are on these companies, but is it in the interest of the town to go to a 15-year lease? I mean, could you potentially have different companies, bidding for this space sooner than that?
I'm not an expert either, and that's why I hired somebody who is. And my understanding is that there are at least at this point in time, there are limited numbers of carriers who would go on our cell towers, and we've got the big ones on each of them at Congress Street and Reef Road, and I'll stop there for a minute. Can you understand? Am I coming through clear?
You're good.
Yeah, no, we can
Okay.
hear you. And I think I got the gist of it. And if, the consultant agrees that that's probably the best, then I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. Representative Pastilli.
Mr. Moderator, through you to Representative Siebert. I just wanted him to weigh in also on the contract term because he works in the telecommunications industry, so he can add a little color.
Joe Siebert, RTM District 5. Yeah, I've been in the industry for about 35 years. So those kind of contracts are, from my experience, 15 years standard. Jared, my question to you is, and you answered this last time, this is a host neutral type of tower, even though Dish, now owned by AT&T, is the sole owner of the contract, or are they using a tower management company like American Tower? I just want to be clear on that. Do you happen to know?
Sorry, Mr. Sieber, can you repeat your question? I actually switched over to my phone.
Oh, sure, no problem. So you indicated at the last meeting when I asked the question that this is a neutral host type of tower. In other words, it could support all the major carriers, not just AT&T, which now owns Dish, but Verizon and T-Mobile. Those are your three largest. So I would imagine the 60,000 residents in Fairfield would probably use one of those three 99.9% of the time. So that, and you did answer that question. I just want to reconfirm that. And is AT&T, who now owns Dish, the actual owner of that tower and that 15-year agreement, or is there, I know there's a consultant involved, and that's a good thing because that consultant should know how to negotiate, but I just wanted to make sure, is there a tower management company like American Tower is one of the larger ones that is really the landlord, if you will, of this tower? Does that make sense?
I understand what I think I understand what you're saying. So the town is the landlord, and we don't work with a management company. Usually the carriers themselves, they work with management companies to who then who work with our consultant in negotiating these deals. But we are the town is the landlord, and we get the revenue from these leases.
Okay.
Does that help? And so yeah, there are, AT&T is also on this tower. I believe Verizon is on there as well, and now Dish, Sprint. After Sprint and T-Mobile combined, Sprint just took their equipment off of there recently. And you know, I forgot one other thing on this, which was also a benefit to us. When one of the other carriers was looking to upgrade equipment, they noticed that some of the safety equipment, like the climbing pegs and the safety cable, weren't in good shape, and they didn't feel comfortable using them. And so one of the things that we worked out as part of this agreement is that Dish would cover the cost of making the repairs to all the safety equipment. So that's in addition to the, which I believe is somewhere around $15,000 is what we've, when we went out to get some estimates on it, I believe 15,000 was about the cost of that.
Right. So yeah, so T-Mobile's and Sprint, their spectrum is combined now. So it's essentially branded T-Mobile with the combined spectrum of Sprint and T-Mobile. So it implies to me that this new tower, has the capacity to support the three major carriers. It sounds like it's via the agreement, they're upgrading the equipment, perhaps the backhaul, which provides the capacity to the landline network that it eventually hits. So I get the impression, just giving you my personal opinion, I get the impression that based on this, that this is good for the town, good for the citizens to get 5 bars of coverage for the amount of square miles that this tower can support.
Yeah, I think that's probably another benefit of this is having the additional carrier on there. I would also say that like I said, all the major carriers are on there right now. And with each of these agreements, there's a full vetting by engineers to understand what the capacity is of the tower, of each of the towers. And in this case, because it also plays host to the to the police and for their emergency equipment, it gets a different classification. And so they're, you know, when they are looking at the capacity, they have to take that into account. And so they, you know, to make sure that if there's any freezing, wind shear, things like that, that could have an effect on it, they want to be sure that it's going to withstand any kind of major storms, especially because it does host some emergency equipment, emergency communications equipment. And so with each one of these agreements, there is an updating by engineers to make sure that they understand that the cell tower has the capacity to handle any of the additional equipment or changes to equipment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Siebert. Any other questions for Jared? Okay, seeing none in the room and none on the chat. Thank you, Jared.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Item number 5 tonight, noise ordinance. Jill Vergara. And for the folks at home, joined by Representative Galdenzi.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, Jill Vergara for District 7, and I'm doing the presentation for this noise ordinance, which is Chapter 78 of our town code. So I first wanted to go through some thank yous. I wanted to extend a huge thank you to Alyssa Israel, who has been the champion of making some revisions to our noise ordinance for years. She has donated a lot of her time, energy, and actual money. She hired paid a noise consultant $1,000 to help with these revisions. She worked with Representative Perugini when Bill Perugini was serving on the RTM. I do hear some feedback. Okay. And so I know that she's been working on this for a while with RTM members. I don't think anything was able to get through in the last term. So Representative Galdenzi and I picked it up about a year ago. I also wanted to extend a thank you to the police department. Chief Calamaris and Captain Waya have met several times with us. I actually even met with Captain Waya today. They've been very generous with their time and have given us a lot of help and review of this ordinance, and I appreciate them reviewing it and approving the changes. And I also wanted to extend a thank you to Anthony Calabrese and Dylan O'Connor. Anthony met with Representative Galdenzi and reviewed these changes a while ago in the fall, and made some suggestions to correct and to make exemption for maintenance of fields, which we took seriously and we incorporated into our changes because we've been trying to we take it very seriously to listen to everybody's concerns and make compromises. These are big changes, very necessary changes, but we think it's important to listen to everyone and make sure that we're trying to acknowledge all of the concerns and try to get to the best product possible. So we're tackling this ordinance because people want change. It's clear that our current ordinance just isn't meeting the needs of our residents. So each change we've made is in response to constituent complaints, very specific complaints in the past few years that we've read. I wanted to also make a note that any emails that you see coming in right now have not been solicited by me. So these are all unsolicited emails in support of the ordinance, which I think is pretty amazing. And I do plan to do an outreach to constituents in my area too, but I haven't done that just yet. So the overarching goals of this ordinance is to give the police department more tools to use to assist in enforcement, to broaden protections to include daytime hours, to be responsive to constituent complaints, and to simplify the standards to make it easier for residents to understand the rules and the police to enforce those rules. The main significant changes are the plainly audible standard. This only applies to noise produced by sound production devices, which is really amplified music. It doesn't apply to all noise. Several other towns use plainly audible or something similar to plainly audible. These towns include Rocky Hill, Bloomfield, Torrington, Hartford, and Norwalk. Bloomfield, Rocky Hill, and Torrington apply the standard to all noise at all times and assess based on whether the noise can be heard 100 feet away in all circumstances. And you can see from our ordinance, we have a little bit more of a specific application of that standard. Like I said, it only applies to sound amplification devices. And there's different standards for where receptors are and what time of day it is. Plainly audible is defined in section 78.2. It's defined as any sounds that can be detected by a person using his or her unaided hearing faculties or of normal acuity. As an example, if the sound under investigation is a portable or vehicular sound amplification or reproduction device, the enforcement officer need not determine the title, specific words, or the artist performing the song. The detection of the rhythmic bass component of the music is sufficient to constitute a plainly audible sound. This is really to enter a reasonable standard in for the police so that they can enforce it more easily. It's supposed to give them more discretion in their application of this ordinance. We're trying to give them more discretion because the current ordinance relies almost exclusively on a sound meter and decibel readings, which they're having a problem. The police officers only have one, and they can't take it into all of their police cars. And they don't want to have to juggle a lot of devices. So they haven't been using these sound meters, which means they haven't been enforcing our ordinance at all since it's completely reliant on decibel readings. Instead, they've been applying the state statute for breach of peace or public disturbance, which are more onerous than applying a local ordinance. It means that when people are found guilty or fined for for breach of peace or public disturbance, it can be a misdemeanor. So it's a little bit more onerous than the local noise ordinance. The other issue of just using the state statute for these situations is that the fines go to the state rather than the town. So we were trying to find a way for the police officers to enforce our ordinance so that we could get the fines to the town. The plainly audible standard is a really good way to do that and is supported by the police. The other new feature for our noise ordinance is daytime hours. Currently, our ordinance provides the basic baseline protections that the state statute on noise provides with no more protections. So basically, the local ordinance is unnecessary and serves no purpose because the state statute applies to everyone. 66 towns, including us at 67 towns in total have their own local noise ordinances, but they're supposed to have tighter restrictions. Ours doesn't. It almost exactly mirrors the state statute. The police currently receive complaints throughout the day where it's not, even though we don't have daytime hours delineated, doesn't mean that they're not enforcing breach of peace and public disturbance at those times. So we know that from these complaints that there's a desire to have protections to extend into the daytime hours. Our standards for daytime hours rely on residential receptors. So that means the residential receptors, that's who's making the complaints. It would be 55 dBA, which is the same as Torrington, Rocky Hill, and Bloomfield. And for sound production devices, the plainly audible standard of 150 feet from the emitter's property line or inside a residence, which is the same as Bloomfield, Torrington, Rocky Hill. And actually those towns, I'm sorry, those towns have an even looser definition. They apply 100 feet for plainly audible, whereas we're applying 150 feet from the emitter's property line. So the other changes that we are making can be found in 78.7. Those are exclusions. So we added to the exclusions for the ordinance to accommodate for the addition of daytime hours. This would be agricultural activities that would be exempted, public school construction, road maintenance activities by DPW and WPCA, garbage collection during the daytime hours. And I wanted to make a note about this because currently our ordinance doesn't have an exception for garbage collection, which means that technically if garbage collection were occurring anytime during our nighttime hours, it should be a violation based on the decibel readings and so this is extending an exemption to them to garbage collection for the daytime hours, and it's essentially the same as what we have right now. I've heard of concerns about this, and I wanted to mention that a lot of other towns have the same restriction. They restrict garbage collection to the daytime hours and have similar hours as us. So a lot of other towns limit their garbage collection to between 7 and 10 p.m. And almost all of the towns that I had studied do that. But if people are really concerned about the garbage collection, that is an easy fix to just keep the exclusion to garbage collection in general and take the during daytime hours out. I don't think that that's necessary since so many towns are able to manage doing this with and having daytime hours and garbage collection function this way. But if it is a concern of the body, I think that that's something easy to entertain and take out. The other exclusions are public demonstrations and protests during the daytime hours. And we also added specific prohibitions. So for this, it's 78.8, and those specific prohibitions are that construction, blasting, demolition, power tools, home maintenance tools, landscaping, and yard maintenance is supposed to be conducted between 7 and 8 p.m. on the weekdays and 8 and 6 p.m. on the weekends. They're exempted completely from those times from regulation. So people can engage in those activities, and this is very similar to what other towns do as well. Torrington, Bloomfield, Hartford, they all have the same sort of restriction, and theirs are actually more narrow. They restrict these activities to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Rocky Hill restricts these activities from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And for the power tools and landscaping tools, Torrington, Bloomfield, Hartford restrict these activities from 7 to 9 p.m. on the weekdays and 9 to 8 p.m. on the weekends. So it's very similar to what we're trying to make in our changes here too. One of the other specific prohibitions that we had included was igniting fireworks except for the town. And I know that there were some concerns about this, and it's another one that I discussed with Captain Waya today. And I had a email correspondence with Chief McCarthy and have come up with a potential solution to keep fireworks in as a possibility for people to be permitted to do. As they are right now, I think that Chief McCarthy said that there are only 3 to 4 applications for fireworks. McCarthy, I believe. Okay. 3 to 4 applications a year, permits a year for fireworks. So it's really not that many. And the suggestion was made to just limit the time when fireworks can occur to try to address some of the issues that arose with Brooklawn this year. The reason why we put this language in to the ordinance was in response to those complaints for the fireworks and not being able to, having no notice and being taken off guard and having, but I think it's a reasonable fix to make to limit the time that people can let off these fireworks rather than completely disabling people from being able to pull these permits for the fireworks. I wanted to address some of the other concerns that have been raised publicly. I've heard that people are concerned about police discretion in and having it be constrained by our ordinance. And it's actually supposed to do the opposite. And I believe that the police also agree that this new standard of plainly audible is giving them more discretion. It's not compulsory. It doesn't mean that the police have to issue these warnings and fines. It's based on whether the police officers think that something is an excessive amount of noise and is unreasonable at these distances delineated. It's completely left to the police officer's discretion. I know that some people were concerned that it would limit children playing outside, and plainly audible, like I said, only applies to sound production devices. It's music, it's amplified music. It's not even musical instruments. So it doesn't apply to just children having fun and playing. And school events are also found under, the school events would be exempted by 78.7 as well. So you don't have to worry about any restriction on school activities. We took this on to really just be responsive to all of the constituents who have written into us. I think that sitting on the RTM for 8 years now, this has been a really pervasive problem, and it's increased over the pandemic. I got a lot more emails about this issue, and it was always about the lack of daytime hours and not being able to address issues that they were having, and a failure to enforce the ordinance that we have. I think it's a problem that we have an ordinance on the books that we know is not being enforced, and I think it's important to fix it. I also could tell from reviewing other ordinances in the state that we're an anomaly. We are not up to date with this ordinance, and it's important to meet the needs of our residents and make sure that we're protecting people's use and enjoyment of their property. So I don't know if Jeff had anything else that he wanted to say. Okay. I also wanted to add that in the beginning I said that we were really open-minded to suggestions and compromise, and I wish that when we had extended an invitation for several of our colleagues to join us, because we really wanted this to be bipartisan, that they had stayed in, even though they had concerns or reservations about the language. It would have been helpful for people who had criticisms to stay in with our group and help mold and draft the language. Because I think everybody knows, if you've been involved in writing legislation, the best time to actually be productive and make good changes is in the small room. And for that same reason, I think it would have been more productive to work on this in the L&A committee. If there were really substantive changes that you wanted worked on, it would have been easier, because at this point, we have to do it all on the floor of the RTM. And I think that's something we can do and we'll consider, but I think it's a shame that we didn't all work together on this. It's something that all of our residents clearly want.
Okay, Representative Carson, Hunter, you can go.
Point of order, just on that point.
On that point.
It's a procedural question, Mark.
Okay.
You can pull the ordinance and ask for another review, just so you know. That is perfectly allowable. You can pull it and do that. So you don't have to do it on the floor. I just want to be clear about that.
Thank you. Representative Carson.
Laura Carson, District 4. Thank you, Representative Vergara and Representative Galdenzi, for all your hard work and your responsiveness to our constituents. Can you speak to the concerns that I've heard that public, rental spaces or event spaces that we have in town, there's concern that we won't be allowed to have events anymore at Burr or Penfield or Jackie Durrell, and it's all going to be shut down. We'll lose the revenue. Can you please address that, if that's the truth, if that's being impacted by this ordinance? Thank you.
I think this is an overreaction and an overstatement of how the ordinance would be applied. As I said, the police, this is left to their discretion. It's all supposed to, as it's outlined in the intent of the ordinance as well, this is for excessive, unreasonable noise. I spoke with Captain Wyatt today and confirmed that there have never been complaints about Jackie Durrell during the day or night, and there've only been several complaints about Penfield. So I really didn't think that our ordinance, by regulating in any way the noise, would all of a sudden create new complaints and neighbors all of a sudden having issues when they didn't have them before. Burr was a special case. The other thing with Penfield and Jackie Durrell is that their events are held inside, so the noise is more contained and respectful of neighbors. But the Burr functions were occurring outside, in open air tents. They weren't taking sound proofing measures, and it's necessary that the town engage in soundproofing if they're going to be engaging in a commercial activity like that in the middle of a residential area. So I don't think that it's going to be an issue, but like I said, I would definitely sit down with Mr. Calabrese if he thinks that this is going to be an issue, and try to work through how we can put into the ordinance a protection for those kinds of events, while also being respectful of the neighbors and ensuring that there is consideration for noise issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carson. Representative Zesma.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. And I want to thank not only both of you, but the rest of the working group for all your hard work on this ordinance. Can you also clarify for us, I understand that in the somewhat recent past, a proposal was made or the discussion ensued about soundproofing at Burr, complete with some cost estimates, and that they were not taken up in any way. So I asked that because I understand noise is one of the reasons that there's been not a moratorium, but some scaling back of events at that location.
I don't know the details of those plans for soundproofing Burr. I think I did a little bit of research today and did find that it's there are easy fixes. There are definitely contractors you can find that erect barriers if you still need to have it outside. I did think when we invested, I think it was $1 million in Burr Mansion, that the long-term plan was to have an enclosure out there. And I think that would be a good idea if we plan to continue to have a lot of events there. And engage in a commercial activity in a residential area. I don't think it's reasonable to have a lot of open air outdoor events.
Thank you, Representative Zesma. Representative Astorita?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 10, and thank you for doing this work. So I'm just trying to understand this plainly audible standard, and I know you gave the example that it's not intended to prevent kids playing in the backyard. How do I know that? And I'll just give you like a concrete example where I live. I'm about 200 feet from my neighbor, and he has younger kids, and when they play in the pool in the afternoon, they can be very loud. Why would this not apply to that situation? I guess that's what I'm asking.
It's just music. And literally music played on speakers, megaphone, amplification device. So it doesn't apply to screaming, yelling.
Where is that in the language of the ordinance?
It's in the definitions, and it's in the table that defines all of the standards. You can see that. So that's 78.5 noise level standards. It shows that the plainly audible on that column, it's only applicable to the sound production devices.
Could we put language, specific to the fact that because it wasn't, in reading through it, it wasn't clear to me.
Okay.
And again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not, great at understanding these kind of documents, but
let me see with the plainly audible to the plainly audible definition. We could maybe add it into the plainly audible definition.
okay. And then, because I think that would be helpful. And then the other question I have for you, so in the statistics, it cites that, 91% of the complaints are music related.
Yeah.
Could something have been done to, more specifically address that? Because to be very honest with you, I read through this, and it seems it can be overly broad. Whereas, I'm the the jerk resident in town can decide, well, hey, look at this, I'm going to start calling because I don't like this, my neighbor X, and it could create situations like that where maybe theoretically stuff is within the bounds of these sound issues. So that's my concern.
I do understand what you're saying, and since we are only applying this to music, we can figure out a way to make that more explicit. But I have to tell you that other towns that we've gotten the standard from they do apply it in a broader sense, and to more situations, which we're not doing. We're only going to stick with the music, but these communities have not had a problem with plainly audible. It has not created a situation where they got an explosion of complaints or people became litigious with each other. I just feel like I know that it's a hard thing to change the ordinance so much, and I understand that opens up concerns, but there are other communities that have made these changes and they haven't had any of the problems that we're all concerned about. So I just want to try to put everybody's minds at ease, but we are only applying this to music, and I can figure out ways to make that more explicit in the language.
Do we also know where the most of these music complaints originate from? Because I'm guessing a lot of this stuff comes from the Fairfield U students down on the beach road. So do we?
There was a breakdown from, I think, Ms. Israel did a breakdown from, I think it was 5 or 6 months of complaints. And extended into different areas of Fairfield. The majority was the beach area, but it wasn't, I wouldn't call it a large majority. I could dig that table out, but I think the breakdown was something like 40% in the beach area.
And again, I apologize. I don't know necessarily the relationship between, the Fairfield Police and the university security, but is there a way to perhaps have the university take more responsibility for, monitoring that area, and as a result, perhaps keep some of the noise down? And that would seem to me that could get, that would eliminate a lot of these complaints here without having to go through this.
I think that the police have been working a lot with Fairfield University and the neighborhood, and they've been making strides in that area. I do agree that the university could probably be doing a little bit more to try to control or help their students understand more the expectations of living in the beach area and being respectful of the neighbors.
All right, thank you. I'll give it to somebody else now.
Thank you, Representative Astorita. Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 9. First, thank you to Representative Vergara and others. This is a huge issue in our district between events at the Burr and the university students in particular. Numerous of constituents have reached out about this. And just to go back to the concerns about the events at the Burr for a moment, just to provide some information. In December 2021, January 2022, myself and some others have been contacted, including the administration, contacted by a group of very concerned residents because of the events. And I'll spare you all the details, but one of the things that the residents had done, they were really organized in their approach, and they had actually done some of the research on how to make the events at the Burr so that they could continue to exist and balance the needs of the residents. And actually, the soundproofing, noise reduction things that they had looked at, it was a one-time investment of $15,000 to $25,000 with a 20-year lifespan. So this is not a huge, hindrance to being able to continue to have events at that space, keeping with this revisions.
Representative Horton. Representative Steele.
Hi, Jill. Jeff Steele, District 2. Thanks, Jeff and Jill. Appreciate it. I have a lot of questions, but I think they'll be answered tonight, but just a few bigger questions. And first, let me make a statement that, yes, it would be great to work it out in LNA, but if you remember, LNA was all about form and structure. That wasn't the time to talk about the content and the substance, even though we started drifting in that world a little bit. That's not what that meeting was for. Now, that is today, and that's going forward for the next month, so it can still be worked out in LNA. We did work out form and structure. I look at ordinances. Ordinances are very important pieces of legislation. They can permanently change things in town for the better, for the worse. And even if the intent is good, sometimes the implications and the impact can be much greater than anticipated. And I think my personal opinion is, as of right now, that it does seem to affect everybody in town or the entire town, when it's almost like, killing an ant with a boulder to some degree, I think. But as much as there are other towns, and you've listed a few that have similar things like this, and I'm sure there are many towns that don't. And it seems like there's kind of two issues. One is the sound down at the beach, which I agree has to be addressed. I by no means say it shouldn't be addressed. And the other is let's go beyond that. Now let's talk about, daytime hours and all throughout town and trucks and everything. I thought really the issue was kind of noise at the beach, noise down in that area. And so back to a couple other questions that were asked, it would be great if we all had, not just me, if we all had this data. There's been 470 complaints from 21 to 22. That's up from 350 or so pre-pandemic. And then I saw data that was an annualized average in 2023 of about 150 complaints. Been about 30 something so far in the first 12 weeks. Now, granted, it's not nice weather yet, but even taking that into consideration. So I think to have the data and to know where all the complaints are coming from, and is it primarily music, and maybe you have that data.
Do.
Okay. But the next thing, so I want to know, like, what is the extent, what created it? What is the extent of the problem? You said, who wants change? I say, who wants change? You said, so many people want change. A lot of people want
It
change.
spans across the
Okay.
town too. It's not just the beach area. The complaints that I can think of that were the most pronounced were close to Kings Highway, where there was someone who wrote to all of us where the zoning laws for the outdoor bans at restaurants was not being enforced by zoning, and he was trying to get it shut down with the noise ordinance and was completely unsuccessful, and was unsuccessful with zoning enforcement as well. There was a complaint in the Stratfield area too that had more to do with the drag racing. Drag racing came up too on Post Road. Burr Mansion, I did see a lot of complaints about that. And I honestly, since I'm District 7, a lot of people on Fairfield Beach Road don't write to me about the college students, but I do see it on certain social media outlets, but that's not what I've heard complaints about personally.
But Jill, I mean, we as members get complaints about a lot of things around town. And I think, so how many have you gotten? Have you gotten 13? Have you gotten 70? Have you gotten 150? Where have they come from? Now, I know the police, we just said they've gotten 37 or
Leaf
so this
blowers
year.
too. Leaf
Okay.
blowers are high
So-
up on
so-
people's list.
We look at an ordinance is solving a problem through legislation. Can't this also be, like, I'd like to know, first of all, I'd like to hear from the police. I'd like to hear from Cal Morris. I'd like to hear from the police. Do they like it? Is this what they want? Because wouldn't this tax their officers more? They get called off all the robberies or carjackings or other issues to talk about it. Do you know what our decibel reading is right now? It's like 55 right now. So I look at it as it becomes a bit excessive. But I'll stop in a second. The only thing I'm going to say is, why can't we find out why can't this be solved right now? So is it something the police needs to do or can't do, or what is happening to make us have to legislate this and create a permanent change? Why can't we fix it in terms of, I'd like to just hear from the police. I'd like to hear from the town attorney. I'd like to hear from the waste haulers. I'd like to hear from, school buses who are driving around and changing schedules in the morning. What about a traffic study? I'm just thinking with not allowing waste hauling at certain hours, how is that going to impact
The
it? There
decibel
are a
reading
lot of
has never been taken out
impacts
of the
here.
box.
Jill, there's a lot of impacts here
Our
that I don't
decibel
think you have
meter
answers
in
to.
this town has never been taken out of the box. Our police department doesn't want to use the decibel
I'd like
reader,
to hear that
and
from them.
our ordinance is completely reliant on decibel readings. So the only infractions issued, the only fines issued have been based on state statute. Our local ordinance hasn't been
understand.
enforced once.
So if it's all audible, why do you have a decibel, like, it's a sound level of 50 dBA, but it's detected by the hearing? How does someone know if it's 50 or not? How do you decide that?
Plainly audible has nothing to do with decibel readings.
Oh, I don't understand as it's written why that's there. And the other thing it says here, you talk about, doesn't give the police discretion, because it says, no person shall emit noise exceeding the levels, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, so where's the discretion by the police? These are just some of my concerns. I'm sure we can iron them out. Let's talk them through. But we really didn't go through this last meeting because that wasn't the time to do it. So now I'm reading this and I have some.
Have approved this, and they acknowledge that it's not feasible for them to be using the sound meter. They're not going to be using the sound meter, and they're not going to be taking decibel readings. And so the plainly audible standard was one of the only ways to be able to enforce a noise ordinance here in Fairfield. And people
It's a
want
local, regional part of Fairfield where the most of these complaints, didn't we say 90%? Let's handle it down there with a process. Why are we changing everything?
we're changing it because there's a complete regulatory gap. It's not being used. It's almost embarrassing that we have something on the books that is not enforced at all. And it's not acceptable.
Why isn't it enforced?
It can't be enforced because they don't feel comfortable using the noise meter.
Right, well, that's why I want to hear from the police.
And that's what I put in the memo, in a nice way. I put it in the memo, but I mean, this is a standard that other towns use as well, probably for a similar reason, because it's just not feasible for police officers to have a gun and a taser and all this other stuff and expect them to also have and manipulate a noise meter. So to keep everyone safe and the community safe, our police officers safe, it's much more reasonable to have a plainly audible standard. And it will apply to 90% of the complaints, since most of our complaints have to do with music.
Thank you. Representative Barahona.
Good evening, Representative Barahona, District 5. Thanks, Jill, for your work on this. I just wanted to offer some insights. If I could, I would provide text evidence. I live on Cardinal Street, which is a highly densely populated area between McKinley and Ward. I think you all know the area off Tunxus Hill. And this is not just a beach area issue. As I started to say, if I could provide evidence of my text threads with the dozens of young moms that are in our neighborhood that aren't filing formal complaints, but who are trying to have their children nap and have the drag racing of sometimes perhaps students, local students, a few issues with neighbors who have perpetually loud music. This is not just a beach area problem, and I appreciate you taking this up on behalf of the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Barahona. Representative Pastilli.
Sharon Pastilli, District 3. Representative Vergara, in your working group, did you have correspondence with the police department? So if people wanted to join the working group and they were in it, they would have been able to ask the police department about their concerns about the ordinance. Can you give a little
Yes.
color on that?
Yeah, we've been working with the police from the beginning. Our meetings extend from a year ago. And if people had joined in with us, they would have been able to attend those meetings.
Thank you, Representative Wolf.
Representative Wolk, District 5. Thanks, Jill, for everything that you're doing, and you too, Jeff. I'm a sponsor on this ordinance too. It's not just the beach area. Just to go back to what Representative Steele said about, you put these pieces in the ordinance and it's in good intent, and then maybe it doesn't work out. Ordinances can be changed. If things are wrong, then it can be tweaked if it's becoming a major issue in the town on one of these ordinances where it's creating havoc. Am I correct, Jill, that we can change the ordinances? It's not cast in stone?
I mean, that's the great thing about ordinances, unlike a charter that is pretty set in stone. An ordinance should be able to be manipulable, and look how long it took us to get to this point. I submitted this in February, and we're here talking about it and might vote on it in April. So that's what I talked to Captain Waya about this today, that it has a little bit to do with testing things out. And if Mr. Calabrese and if the police department find issues, we can easily respond to that. They've come to us with changes that they want made to ordinances before, and we can do that again.
Thanks, Jill. And this isn't just the beach area. I was brought into all this by Representative Durrell, whose neighbor was complaining that the gardeners were starting too early on the weekends. And I met his neighbor, and he conveyed to me that, what would be, it's now at 7 o'clock and we move it to 8 o'clock. And I didn't think that was unreasonable to start on a weekend at 8 o'clock for gardening work. And I can attest to this because when I was president of my condominium for many years, our gardeners were coming early on Saturday morning, and I was getting phone calls
from a lot of the condo unit owners and renters that they were complaining that this was getting started too early. So I spoke to the gardeners and then they started at 8. So anyway, everything can be tweaked, and thanks, Jill, for everything.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Representative Woke. Representative Georgiadis?
Drew Georgiadis, District 9, the beach area. Thank you very much for doing all this work. Doing ordinances is part of our job as RTM members. That and the budget are the two most important things. So thank you very much for doing this. If we sat around and didn't do ordinances, then we would not be doing our job. I would like to say that for me, and I'm a co-sponsor of this ordinance, it's about respect. If you know the rules, and then you can respect the rules, and your neighbors can respect the rules. And while the beach area does have obviously lots of college students, for me, to follow up on Ms. Barahona's comment, it's about a densely populated area. We are close to our neighbors. We need to know the rules. I hate to use a sports analogy, but it's like you have to have you can't just have the rules on the first quarter and the fourth quarter. You have to have the rules first, second, third, and fourth. And I know a lot of people hate sports analogies, but it's a densely populated area. You need to know the rules. It's all about getting along, and they have not been enforced, and there's been a lot of frustration. So thank you again for all your hard work. And I know the constituents in my area and myself personally will look forward to seeing if these changes will make a difference, and I hope they will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Representative Iacono?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to Representative Vergara. First of all, Jill, the package that you put together was really impressive, and you can tell that you spent a tremendous amount of time on it, and I really respect that you did that. I have tons of questions and issues and points of concern that I've made notes on, and I'll try and go through quickly and then sum up with a suggestion. But the first thing I want to ask you, did the police endorse the full ordinance as you have it sitting here right now? Would they give you your endorsement of the
Glad
full
that
ordinance?
you said that, because there is something that I needed to raise, and I had it in my notes and I just skipped right over it. They did approve and review all of these changes. The one thing that they wanted to change back was the 24-hour reset rule and the enforcement provision. In our current ordinance, we have a 24-hour reset for fines. And so someone can be fined like three times in a day, and then if they have another violation the next day, it's a warning again, and then the whole process starts over again. And what we did was take the 24-hour reset out, and Captain Waya had asked me to put it back in. I had a discussion with the co-sponsors and with Ms. Israel, and we were concerned that leaving the 24-hour reset would lead to more recidivism, and we just want to try to prevent people from being recurrent offenders. And in researching, we didn't find any similar ordinance with that kind of language with a 24-hour reset, and we didn't find any other towns with a 24-hour reset for this type in reviewing noise ordinances. So, but I want to put that out to the body if that's something people want to offer as an amendment. It wasn't something that I wanted to put back in.
Thank you for clarifying that. That is one of my points. I will not approve this without the 24-hour piece going back in, based on the work needed to be done by our law enforcement. I think it's important that they be endorsing the entire document and not be having consternation over a certain section of it. That's extremely important to me. Furthermore, for people who are quote unquote innocent offenders getting caught up in having no time period. What you've essentially laid out there, so if I get a noise ordinance on March 31st, and then I am a repeat offender a year from now, I could be subject to a fine because I already got my verbal a year ago.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm not good with that at all. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's appropriate. People make mistakes. I think you're trying to solve a problem for, honestly, people that just are going to ignore rules no matter what. So that was one thing. The plainly audible, to Representative Ostrita's point, it's just simply not clear that this applies to music. That section needs to be rewritten in plain English for the common person to understand what that is. And, does that preclude me from my annual, cleaning of my spring patio, where I bring my speaker outside, turn it on, and play my music, which has to be loud enough for me to hear over the sprinkler system to wash everything down, or when my neighbor cleans out his garage and I'm on a quarter acre, we're in small properties, and he plays his music down there and he's cleaning out his garage. I mean, what are we really doing
I wouldn't
here?
think so. That doesn't sound excessive or unreasonable, and I wouldn't think any of your neighbors would feel that way either. And I wouldn't think that a police officer who was called over to your property to investigate something like that would find that that was excessive or unreasonable either.
Okay. I don't want to have situations where neighbors are thinking to call the police off of their real work, the real stuff that they need to be doing in this town, to come deal with this kind of stuff. So I just want to make sure that we're not encouraging, that with some of what is written in here, because it's sort of ambiguous. The issue of the fireworks, I 1000% think that we ought to reconsider throwing the baby out with the bathwater and just tighten up the restrictions. Put in the regulations and make them clear.
You're not in favor of the 10:30
No,
cutoff?
the 10 o'clock cutoff is fine with me.
Okay.
I'm saying, please don't, if somebody wants to get married at Penfield Beach and they're in a position they can afford to have a little fireworks display, good for them, let them. Let's just set that up so that they can do that. And make that available to them. I've heard a lot around town with this stuff that's floating out there of this being the no fun ordinance. And I don't think we should have that reputation. I'm a little bit concerned. I know the excessiveness, if someone has a guitar player on an outside patio at a restaurant. I mean, are we looking to shut these things down? What's our real objective here? I know there was an incident with a particular restaurant that's no longer in town that had excessive band noises. I feel like we're doing problem solving on problem people, and
Those
the rest of us are all
permitted.
suffering
Also,
for it.
those instances where they're permitted, will be making an exception as well. So that shouldn't be an issue under the ordinance.
Okay. The other towns that you're all referencing, they're small towns. They're none of them.
Hartford?
Well, okay, Hartford.
Norwalk?
I'll give you Hartford. Rocky Hill. I mean, Blooming, Oxford. I mean, we're a city. That's what we are. And we
Norwalk
can't.
and Hartford.
Okay, well, I'll tell you something. Norwalk and Hartford, I don't know about Hartford, but there are towns that have carve-outs on exceptions that we aren't granting. I have major concerns about the garbage haulers. I would like to take you up on your offer to correct that the way that you mentioned.
Okay.
I think that needs to be addressed most definitely. Regarding the issues at Burr, I understand from Mr. Calabrese that he was asked to put in noise insulation. The first selectman woman approved that, and they spent $2,500 last year to address that situation. So I too share Mr. Steele's concern that we should be hearing from, Mr. Calabrese, we should be hearing from the police department, we should be hearing from DPW and the effects that this will have on garbage haulers. And it's all well and good what other towns do, but we are our own town. And we need to be specific and responsive to the 60,000 people that are here. And in my hearing of all of this, and I don't doubt it, and we've asked for the data from the police department, the bulk of this seems to be from a concentrated area. And the people that we got emails from today they're all basically neighbors, on the same street, in the same area, saying the same thing. And you're right. It's a very tiny area. You're living on a postage stamp. You put one foot on one piece of property and you can touch the other piece of property with that foot. And most of these people are all, I looked it all up, relatively new to Fairfield, 2017, 2018, 2021. You know, it's a shame that there wasn't more research done for them understanding what the constraints of that particular area are.
For Burr, I think in particular, though, that I know that they've had events there in the past, but there was a huge escalation that residents who have lived in the area for a while, it was a significant change for them. And that was under the purview of the Fairfield Museum. So I think once Anthony took that over, he helped to correct it. But one thing I'd like to try to do for that neighborhood is to put this into our laws or rules somehow, because as great as it is that Anthony is being respectful of the neighborhood and listening to their complaints, it's just not good enough. He's not necessarily going to be here forever. You know, I know he's a young guy, but he's not going to be the Park and Rec director forever. And it's good to get this into our rules because it was an issue and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Understood. As far as the exclusions are concerned, we're missing too many of them. And when I trust that you guys were all working with the noise regulations from CCM. I went through them. There's significant exceptions that we don't allow for in our ordinance that are allowed for in some of the towns that you're, cherry picking things out of, telling us that, we should add in, which is fine. But then these guys have the exceptions down in their A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So
I'd be really interested in seeing what other exceptions you'd like to include.
okay, I've made notes, and I could go on, and we'll be here late, and that's not necessary. But to your point, I would personally welcome an opportunity for you to withdraw this, for us to sit down and to go through the substantive changes and concerns so that there is bipartisan support to pass this. Whether people were involved earlier or they weren't, they want to be involved now. And I think we want to put together a good work product. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding about what this ordinance was going to be, and a lot of people thought it was a ban on leaf blowers. So it's extensive, it's far-reaching. I think you have a good outline. I think that there are areas that need to be tweaked. I don't think that we should waste the body's time spending an hour and 15 minutes, myself, Representative Steele, Astorita, pick anybody in here that wants little tweaks. I think that the work is best done if we pull this and set a goal and set a timeline and work to get it done in a fashion that would be amenable to a wider audience.
I'll take that under consideration. I do think an option is, since we're both in LNA, that we could bring it back to the LNA committee and make these changes there and bring it back to the body.
I have no problem with that. You're asking LNA to do. I personally will sign up to do that work with you.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Iacona. Representative Gale.
I have to hold it. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Vergara. And what is your? Sorry, this is Hannah Gale again, District 6. So I have had some complaints from constituents in my area. We live right on top of each other, but there's also a lot of young people who rent in the area who are students at Sacred Heart. And there's a lot of young people living in our area, young parents too. And, music nowadays is, generally played from your iPhone into a speaker, and everyone has one, you know what I mean? So people are playing music, on, outside or in their backyards in my area a lot. And we all have to sort of just make allowances for each other, when people have different parties, then, everyone, gives them a little extra space because we can all kind of see into each other's yards. And my concern about this is that, right now we all behave very neighborly, but if there's someone who can just walk around, shh, That's what I like imagine happening with this kind of an ordinance, that that they're the kind of people who are just intolerant of, in general, just suddenly have all of this ability to complain a lot about the noise that is just inevitable in a town where there's two different universities, so, you think of the towns where these, ordinances are working well. Do they have two universities? Do they have the amount of young people?
I thought that one did have a university, doesn't
But
Bloomfield?
I mean, just to Representative Iacona's point, our town is unusual. And so, I just am very concerned with all of these daytime hours being added, and that there's just, we just have to learn how to work together and be neighborly. And instead of this encouraging that, I feel like it's going to do the opposite. So I'm very concerned, and I think there are many things that are included in here that really need to be looked at more carefully, because I think it could have a very negative effect on the town.
I definitely do think that there's always needs to be a balance between freedoms from and freedom to. But right now, our noise ordinance in not being effective and useful to people is not protecting people's use and right to their own property.
I'm not
So we
saying
have to
that
fix
we
that.
shouldn't have some legislation, but I'm just saying that I do not believe that this addresses the needs of our town in a way that is going to be productive. And the idea of putting an ordinance, making it law, knowing that there are so many issues with it that we intend to tweak it, that makes no sense to me.
I don't acknowledge that I don't think that there's going to be issues with these changes from the way that it has been effective in other towns. And I think that it's all kind of very speculative. And, I do think that it's important to try this as a change. Ours is completely outdated and it's just not helping the residents right now. I think from everything that we've been hearing, there is a big gap there that needs to be filled.
Thank you, Representative Gale. I think, Representative McCabe.
Representative McCabe, District 4. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I want to again thank my colleagues for putting so much work into this ordinance and providing us with a lot of data that supports the work that you've done. I'm feeling a little confused because some of the comments makes it seem like we don't already have a noise ordinance. So it seems like this is in many ways a fairly modest improvement to an ordinance that's actually been on the books for a while. One, it seems like it addresses a challenge that the police in fact have. They are getting lots of complaints, it looks here, like here in this chart that you sent along with the backup. And I believe you mentioned that while 40% of the complaints are in the beach area, there's another 60% for the rest of the town where some of these complaints are coming from. And that the ordinance as written is very hard to be enforced, and that some of the options that the police are forced to use are breach of peace, which actually is very punitive to the people in our town now. So it sounds like both the residents are facing a more challenging legal environment with this current ordinance. The police are unable to do what they need to do and want to do to help the public because they either need to carry around this device or to use a very punitive form of enforcement. And we know that, things are different now post-pandemic, that we have a lot of remote workers. We have a different environment. And I think an extension into daytime hours makes a lot of sense. I think the vast majority of the emails that we've received are supportive of this. So I guess I'm not sure that we're considering a change that's overly dramatic from what we already had.
I agree with you, and it's also that we're not reinventing a wheel here. I mean, a lot of other towns have similar standards to what we would like to implement here. So, and we're one of 67 towns with local noise ordinances, and we're the anomaly one. We're the only one that doesn't have daytime hours delineated.
And thank you. And I just want to add that I appreciate, I know that Fairfield, we're all unique in a lot of different ways, each of our towns, but it is nice to know when other communities that range from a small town like Rocky Hill to a city like Norwalk or Hartford, that those municipalities didn't all of a sudden see a massive spike of, more complaints, more punishments, neighbors fighting with neighbors, chaos in the streets. So it's good to know. I mean, granted, we could be different and we could see something outlandish here, but it's good to have that backup. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCabe. Representative Bateson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. I want to thank Hannah Gale. You put into words something that I didn't know how to put into words. I thought you did a good job with that. I really did. That is something that crossed my mind, and you did a good job with that. Jill, I understand where we're going with this. I got to agree with Pam, though. I really think that I'd ask you to reconsider this, pull it back to LNA so we can have the discussion and work out shortcomings in this, or things that I see that I just don't agree with. My fear is that if deficiencies aren't acknowledged, I'm scared that honestly this is going to go to a party line vote and it's going to pass as is. I'm being practical about this. If I look down the road, that's what happens. If we sit here and say, we want this, we don't agree with this, we want it out, and it becomes, political, it winds up getting passed. I just don't think it's a good piece of legislation. It's well written, but you put these things into writing, the general public has no idea what's coming. And some guy's going to be, you're going to have a roofing contractor in August. These guys start at the crack of dawn. It's what they do. Nobody wants to be on a roof when it's 90 degrees out. They all start rip and replace. It starts at dawn. The phones at town hall are going to light up, or, the police are going to get called, and we're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to start dealing with these situations on a one-on-one basis, because here's a law that says you can't do that. What am I going to tell my neighbor when, the police show up at 6:30 on a Sunday night when he's cutting his lawn in the middle of the summer? I don't know about you guys, but, when my family was young, I went through the grind working 6 days a week.
I think it's an
Pam-
8 PM cutoff.
No,
So
I get it.
It's a pretty late time period that people have to
I'm
do their
just
yard
saying-
maintenance.
I'm just saying, I know, but I'm just saying there's things in here that I think we really need. I would like to work out in a small group setting like LNA. I'd ask you to really consider that, because I just don't see it. If it gets passed as is, it's just not, it's too much. It's overbearing. It's just too much. I'd really ask you to bring it back to LNA. I mean, I hear Pam's sentiment. She's more than willing. Jeff seemed like he's into it. I'm into it. Let's do it.
Well,
Thank you,
I
Representative
do
Biggs.
appreciate your willingness to work with me on this, and that's what I really wanted from the beginning. So that all sounds very good to me.
Representative Parham?
Cindy Parham, District 2. I had a question about how long you've been working on this ordinance.
I think that we started working with Alyssa about a year ago.
And how long ago did you ask the Republican caucus to help you with this ordinance?
Very early on.
A year ago?
I can't remember exactly, but it was a while ago.
Over 6 months?
Yes.
So why are we reinventing the ordinance changes tonight for the last hour when they were asked, formally asked, informally asked, and knew this was happening? Why are we reinventing this now? Why do you have to rewrite it again? You already spent numerous hours with your committee. It just seems like a disrespect, and whether or not this votes through party line is not really our fault.
Well, that's cooperative. I don't think we got formal notice as a caucus to participate on the
Point of order.
You do not have the floor, Pam. You do not have the floor, Pam.
individuals.
You do not have the floor, Pam.
Well, then maintain decorum with Representative Parham, who's being rude.
Okay. Representative Bastilli? No? Who was it? Nobody here? Representative Myers?
Representative Myers, District 8. I'm actually disappointed that Chief wasn't here tonight because I really wanted to ask him, since I really haven't had a lot of experiences with noise violations in my neighborhood, and I really don't, read Facebook and whatnot to find out what else is going on with this problem. I mean, how does a police officer today deal with a noise violation when they go to somebody's home? Do they, I mean, clearly, if it's excessive, they probably weren't called. I mean, if they've been called to the house or the area, it's probably already excessive. They don't really need to pull out a device to know that it's excessive. So whether they can prove that there was a noise violation with the device or not, that's to be said. But how do they actually shut down the party? Do they knock on the door and say, "Hey, we've got a complaint. Could you turn it off?" And in most cases, does the sound go off, and does it kind of go away at that point? I mean, I'm not really sure why we need this ordinance to help the police to control noise.
They do have some tools available to them. I mean, they do have those state statutes. They're not using the, we're not providing them a local ordinance as a tool though at all. I mean, so I think to answer your question, when they're arriving at someone's door, they're going to assess whether it's a disturbance, a breach of peace, and they're three separate offenses that they can apply. And it's based on a reasonable standard and also whether there's intent, and they can also do it based on sort of like recklessly creating a situation to, disturb or so it's a little bit higher of a bar than what our local ordinance would require. And that's another reason why it would be a little bit easier. They have to prove certain things in court if they're going to actually get these misdemeanors made. And it's a little bit higher bar than what our local ordinance would require.
Okay.
And I do think that it's a really good idea to get the police here to explain some of the procedures and I talked to Captain Waya about that. I thought I didn't want to waste their time, and so I thought that it would make sense to have them appear when we were voting. But if everybody wants them earlier, I'm sure that they would be willing to appear before us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Myers. Representative Myers. Representative McCormick?
Representative McCormick, District 2, thank you for your hard work. I do understand the time and effort put into trying to start and make some changes that you feel are in the best interests of the folks that are contacting you. I do find it a little curious that I believe we received roughly about 8 emails, and of the 8 folks who wrote in, I believe 7 of them reside below the Old Post Road, essentially in the beach area, whether Fairfield Beach Road, Penfield Road, Roland Road. And I do think that this is an issue that does need to be addressed, certainly for the beach area. I do have concerns about comments being made about if it's wreaking havoc, we can manipulate this. Essentially what you're talking about is imposing a law that's going to encroach upon people's freedoms and their ability to enjoy their property that they pay taxes on the way they they deem is appropriate for them. And I do think that we do have to be neighborly in line with what Representative Gale said. We need to be tolerant of people, and if your neighbor's having a party and playing loud music on a particular day that you're not really interested in listening to it, perhaps you find something else to do, shut your windows, leave your home, that kind of thing. I think that it's going to sound really kind of, maybe petty, but the way I read this, if you come home on a Saturday night after working all day and you decide you want to fire up your lawnmower at 6:30 at night, That's prohibited under this, the way that this is written.
On the weekend.
On a Saturday night, that's a weekend, right?
On-
Okay, that to me in the middle of the summer is just unacceptable. I mean, we have people now that are working 7 days a week, 12 and 15 hours a day to pay their bills, to pay everything that they have to pay. And a lot of folks that people might not think are the kind of people that would be cutting their own lawns or cutting their own lawns, and they're maintaining their own property, and they're just trying to get by. And that's a huge encroachment on freedom to me. And it just, when I read that, I actually had to read it 6 times to ask myself, is this really what this says? And I don't understand it. I don't get it. I understand that we have a problem at the beach, but why do we have to extend this to the entire town of 64,000 or 62,000 people, and get into issues like people trying to just maintain the property?
Again, I don't think that it is only the beach area, like the constituent who Representative Wolk mentioned, and it was specific about yard maintenance equipment, does not live in the beach area. So those restrictions were actually compromised. We were contemplating other restrictions, and we were responsive to the police input and tried to review what other towns are doing. And we wanted to take a baby step towards regulating the yard maintenance equipment, because it has become a big problem for people. It is one of the most significant complaints that we've received.
I understand if you're trying to catch a little bit of extra sleep on a weekend, you don't want somebody firing up their leaf blower in your window at 7 a.m. But at 6 o'clock, 6:15, it doesn't get dark in Fairfield some nights in the middle of the summer till 9 o'clock at night. Why should somebody have to be restricted in the use of their property? Except that there's an intention here to try to restrict the use of the item that they want to use. So I think that that's a big problem that I have with
Would
it.
you be amenable to having the same restrictions that apply on the weekdays? Just extend it through the weekend?
I'm not the only one that gets to decide this, certainly, but I do think 6 o'clock is excessively restrictive for people. I mean, if somebody's firing up their lawnmower at 8:30 on a Saturday night, I mean, that's a little bit unique. But I think it's something to consider. And I do echo the comments of Representatives Gale, Representative Steele in particular. I think all of the stakeholders that are going to be infringed upon here really need to be taken into account. This is not just a matter of a certain number, whether it's 20, 40, 50, however many people you surveyed, having their voices heard because they're the loudest. We got 8 emails before tonight, and 7 of them were from the beach area. Seems to me, at least from what we've heard, and I'm not saying it's exclusively to the beach area, but it certainly is a problem that is at the forefront of their minds, and they want it addressed, and I don't blame them for wanting it addressed. I would also say that, when you buy a property and your house is literally 6 or 7 inches from your neighbor in the beach area, and I've been down there, and some of those houses are literally feet from each other, there's a certain expectation that your neighbor may be playing a radio loud one night, and you're going to hear it. I mean, if you want to live in an area where you're not going to be having to listen to that, then perhaps you need to consider buying a property in a different area of the town, maybe up in Greenfield Hill, maybe in Vermont where you can buy 100 acres, but buying on the beach with very little room between homes and expecting that you're going to have, as you put it, tranquility and peace at all hours of the day, not just in the evenings and late at night, but hours of the day, I think that that's an infringement upon your neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCormick. Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I want to follow up on Representative McCormick's comment. I agree with her. It is an infringement, but I see it in a different way. If someone's going to mow their lawn at 5 in the morning or 8 p.m., they're affecting all the neighbors around. And again, it comes down to respect. It comes down to people's right to use their property in the way that the expectations are, to be able to work at home, to be able to have their children nap, to have a barbecue in the backyard. And that's all within your rights of your personal property. And those expectations are innate. And I think that if we can all know the rules to follow and respect each other, then that is what's part of a community. And Fairfield is a community. I've lived here for 31 years, and I work very hard to respect my neighbors. And we've never really had any problems. There have been parties, but yes, the houses are close together and they are, whatever. And I agree with Hannah. And, but you do need to have rules so that everybody is respectful and everyone can enjoy their property. So I have never mowed my lawn, and I mow my own lawn, and I never have to mow my lawn so that impacts my neighbors. I'm respectful and find the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Representative Horton.
Can I make a comment to, because I just want to acknowledge that noise is a nuisance. We know that in law and in health and safety, noise is a nuisance, and there's a reason why government has to regulate it a little bit. And it has to do with, like Representative Georgiadis said, the way people use their property. And if it is an infringement when people have excessive noise to the point where it amounts to a nuisance and it disables people from using and enjoying their property. So we have to balance those two things out, and we're just not doing that appropriately right now.
Thank you, Representative Horton.
Thanks, Margaret Horton, District 9. So first, I think, Representative Vergara, you've done a good job of showing that even though, yes, a lot of the emails have come from beach area residents, as you said, it was about a 40-60 split, and in fact, not entirely the beach area. But I'm really struggling with this idea that I'm hearing from people of, let's say it is just the beach area, that if that's the case, we shouldn't address it. And that, so if there, isn't it our job as a body to make sure that we are looking at quality of life for all residents? So if there was an issue that came up that was significantly and negatively impacting the quality of life for residents in Stratfield or Greenfield Hills, should we just be saying, well, tough, you bought a house there, so deal with it? I just don't understand that line of thinking. And I just think, yeah, maybe it is more significantly impacting one area, but our job is to make sure that we are addressing that regardless of where it's happening.
I agree. And I think that we have a variety of density in the town, and that there are a bunch of different neighborhoods that are dense and have these issues with mediating the noise problems. And so I think it could help a lot of people.
Thank you, Representative Horton. Representative Longo.
Hi, Melissa Longo, District 1. I also have a lot of questions, but everyone keeps referring back to this 40-60 split, and I didn't see that in any of the things that you provided for us. And I'm just wondering what specifically the 40-60 split is regarding.
It was from an analysis that Ms. Israel conducted on about 6 months of data, and I could get that to everybody.
Okay, that would be helpful because we're all talking about, I just didn't have anything to reference to. The other thing that I have concerns about, it just, yes, we're supposed to represent every single part of our town. I think that's what we're all trying to do here, is not just say it's only one part of the town, we shouldn't address it. We should, of course, address it. It's obviously problematic to the people that are living in that district, and that should be addressed. I don't think anyone here is arguing that point. It's also, there's 8 people out of a town of over 60,000 that have, written to us about this, and I don't feel like that's an overwhelming enough of number to, in my opinion, this is extremely drastic change for anything, and I don't think that we really need to hear. There's just a lot of more information that we need. I think everyone said something that I agree with wholeheartedly, is we need the police here to say exactly what those procedures are. When Representative Asterita was asking questions about procedures and things like that, because I'm cloudy on that. I don't know how that all works. And it's, a lot of this just seems kind of a little bit unfair to the other people. And I don't think that any one of us has any right to say at 7 o'clock at night, you shouldn't be able to mow your lawn because, and listen to music while you're doing it, because that might be the only time that someone has free. And so being respectful, there's a line of being respectful, but there's also a line of, it's my property. and I'm going to do what I want to do because I pay taxes here and I own this property. And it's not up to me to say, is it okay with you if I mow my lawn now? It just becomes this ridiculous thing that, you know, is overstepping. I feel like for us to make this decision is overstepping. And it's just a huge overreach, in my opinion. And you know, the drag racing thing, that our local police officers can't do anything about that. Their hands are tied by the state. That shouldn't even be discussed unless you want to talk to your state reps about that. The other thing about the, you know, not everyone is going to respect the rules. It's just the way that it goes. And those small amount of people, letting those people disrupt everyone else's way of life and how they want to celebrate or do things, I just don't think that that's fair to the amount of residents that live in this town. You know, if someone wants to have a birthday party and they have 50 people at their house or 30 people and they have music playing, you're going to get a complaint. And what if you have a large family? What if you have family in from coming out of town? It just seems like there's too many unanswered questions. And for us to just say, this is the law now, you're not allowed to do that. I don't like it. I think we need to address these specific issues and pick them apart a little bit more. I think this can be very good in some respects, but it just seems like there's too many things for us to lay down the law and say, no, you can't do this. No, this resident can't do that. It just doesn't seem fair or frankly American at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Longo. Representative Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill. Maybe 2 months ago, Bill Perugini called me. I know he's worked for many, many months on this issue, and he was talking to me about how important it was, and he gave me a little quiz. And to address a little bit about what Representative Meyer said, I think it'd be great to have the police here to answer this themselves, but just to shed a little light, he said, so how many decibel meters? He explained the whole decibel meter thing to me and said, how many do you think we have in town? And I said, 50? He said, we have 1. So if the police are in Stratfield and they get a call, they're supposed to drive back to the police station downtown, pick up the 1 decibel meter, which is probably not charged or not tuned, drive back to Stratfield, go to the event and use it. He said it's just not realistic. So I thought that was realistic and interesting. And maybe if the police are here, they can shed a little bit of light on that. And then in response to what Representative Longo just said, I think the whole point of this is that just we have to draw some reasonable boundaries. And if the one thing that I've heard that maybe we need to address is the time that individuals are allowed to mow their lawn in the summer when it's still light out till 8 p.m. So maybe we look at that, but should you be able to mow your lawn at 3 in the morning? I don't think any of us would agree with that. It's really just a question of where we draw the boundary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Brown.
It's going to be quick.
Representative Steele.
Jeff Steele, District 2. So sounds like we still have some concerns, questions, obviously. As Representative Bates and Iacono said, makes sense to maybe bring this back to LNA. I agree with that. Happy to work with you on that. As far as the comment before about why we didn't do this, and you've been working on it for a year, we were only told in January. I saw the email in January. So why we didn't decide to join 2 months ago, who knows? We've got a whole slate of caucus members here for whatever reason. But now it's in front of us. Now we have every right to look at this and review it. That's democracy. That's what we do. So to say we should be ignored and just proceed with it that's not right.
I did not say that I would proceed and ignore it.
Yes, ma'am.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you did not say that, Representative Vergara, and I thank you for your willingness to work in a bipartisan fashion. We did not get formal caucus notice until 2023. I understand that you may have reached out to individual Republicans who may have chosen not to participate. I personally was not one of those people, which is completely fine. But our formal notification as a caucus, and I just went through my whole email chain, We were told about Crumb Rubber in 2022. We were told about Arts thing. We were told that the Democratic Caucus was working on certain ordinances. I have the emails, but they were not named. We were asked if we were working on any ordinances. So, but I just want to be clear for the record, as a formal written notification of things that did not come to our caucus until 2023. But I appreciate that you have the spirit to want to work on this in a bipartisan fashion. You and I have worked together before. I think we work well together. And there is willingness to do that. And I don't want this to be a partisan thing. I don't think the majority of us do. And it's kind of obnoxious to insinuate anything otherwise, but you definitely did not do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Iacona. Is this going to be directed to the ordinance because we've been going on here? Okay, directly on the ordinance because Representative Gill.
Thank you so much. I wanted to answer the representative, who I don't know your name, I'm sorry.
Representative Brown.
Thank you. Brown, nice to meet you. Brown, nice to meet you. I just wanted to say two things. Number one, there is already a prohibition against mowing your lawn at 3 a.m. because we have this lovely nighttime ordinance, which everyone respects and everyone knows what it is. So in my neighborhood at 10 o'clock p.m., it is all quiet because everyone can respect something that is beneficial to everyone like that. I also want to say that I'm looking right now at an Amazon page for a professional decibel meter with, highly accurate. It's $37.90. So this whole narrative that it's impossible for the police to use a decibel meter because that just doesn't make any sense to me because they're so inexpensive. So it seems like we're changing a law saying that the police cannot monitor the decibel levels effectively. And in fact, I think that we need to discuss that with the police. If the issue is 1 meter, we could get more. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gill. I'm not trying to ignore you. Representative Wackerman had her hand up. She put it down. So Representative Pastilli.
I'm just joking, Mr. Moderator. Sorry. In response to Representative Gale, the problem isn't the cost of the meters. The police, the members of the police department that Representative Vergara spoke to actually said it's the number of items that they have to bring with them, not the actual cost of the meter. And then also, if we were to bring this back to LNA, I just wanted to throw this out into the public that it would not be to delay the ordinance, but we'd want a commitment of how much time would pass so that we get this done before we're out for the summer. Thanks.
Mr. Moderator, may I be recognized?
Representative Iacona.
I said very explicitly, I thought that I'd be more than willing to set a deadline to make sure that this happens and reach some type of conclusion. This is not a delay tactic. It's an opportunity to fix things that we feel that we have serious concerns about.
Thank you. Representative Gale, when you go home tonight, I want you to Google if these can be mounted on police cars, okay? Thank you. That's your homework. Anybody else with a comment? I'm hoping not. Representative Gerber.
This will only be like a half hour, so buckle up. No, very quick comment. First of all, thank you so much for doing this, Jill. I think all along, you probably expected there to be a lot of feedback, so you moved the ball out of the divot. Now people are going to start paying attention and giving you feedback, and I'm sure there's room to negotiate. So it sounds very promising on that front. The other thing I just wanted to mention was that I did recently receive 2 calls from people in the Sacred Heart area who are concerned about the expansion of Sacred Heart and the noise that's coming along with that, and they're building of new dorms, and they're worried that they're continuing to be like ignored and squeezed out. So I think this might set some people at ease about that area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gerber, and thank you for another sports analogy, removing the ball out of the divot. Anybody else? Thank you. All right.
Can I
Um,
ask that if, I think Alyssa Israel has been waiting this whole time?
Yeah, I told her she can comment,
Okay.
not tonight,
Oh.
not comment tonight. If she has something to say, there's no public comment tonight. If she wants to dial in and listen to the LNA meeting, maybe you guys let her talk. That's great. Yep. Anything else?
Yeah, I do. When do we, I know we don't do it at committee, so it has to.
No.
Correct, but when, just for the benefit of the public, when is public comment? Will you take public comment next Monday, or will it be when we vote in April? So they.
Take public comment next, it's on the agenda. We can take public comment next Monday.
Okay, so if people are interested in speaking,
Yeah.
then they can come on Monday.
And who knows what happens between now and Monday, right?
Sure.
All right, thank you. It was, all right, item number 6 is form a committee on energy initiatives. Mr. John Kuhn.
Hello. Hi, John Kuhn, District 7 RTM. Like to try and keep this game from going into overtime, so I'll be brief.
Thank you for that.
The purpose of this committee is when UI first announced their rate hike of whatever it was, I was kind of shocked that they could get away with that. And I thought, are there some ways that we as a town body can do some things to counteract this and maybe take more control over our energy, maybe reduce pricing, maybe have better reliability? And I know that Representative Leeper had a program with Pura there a few months ago, and I believe the first select woman is doing something, maybe did it this week, which I think are great, and they help to address sort of individual things that people can do. But the purpose, what I want to do is I want to see if we can find different ways of attacking this problem. So my first reaction after the rate hike was to say, can we do something with blight laws, or can we do something with air rights to maybe tax the utilities in some way and get some rebate back to each of the individual taxpayers? Maybe it works. I don't know. That's part of the idea of the committee, that we would look at some of the ideas of this kind of nature. And the ideas have run the gamut of that on through maybe buying all the utility assets in our town and running a municipal utility ourselves. I think that the most likely outcome right now, but this is the beginning of the committee, is to address community energy aggregation. And what's that? Now, that's a program where the town acts as the buyer for the individual ratepayers and passes on the cost savings that they can get, not really through bulk purchases, but through using brokers and that sort of thing. It's something that has been, there are 13 states that do it now. Massachusetts was the first one in 1994. The most recent is New Hampshire. I came across this when I was looking at the Eversource outage map. Tells you the excitement in my life during one of the recent storms. And I noticed that I went to school in New Hampshire, and I noticed that one of the towns, Exeter, was not on their map. So I clicked on it, and it turns out that Exeter is not governed by Eversource because they have one of the, well, they were in the midst of launching their own community energy aggregation program at the time. So those are the sorts of things I want to look at. Then there's some other things that might be beneficial too. I've been talking with a company that does microgrids. They do natural gas microgrids. And I thought about it for schools, but it probably doesn't work. He was telling me that's going to be too big for that. So maybe our development director, Mr. Barnhart, Mark Barnhart, I want to talk to him about maybe there's some way of having a natural gas microgrid that would be used commercially that could be something that would attract more businesses to move into Fairfield. So those are sort of the ideas that I've had, and I've spoken with a few people on the Democrat side about joining the committee, and this is the moment at which we can look to Republicans to join it as well, so that we don't get down the road and find out that you guys didn't agree to it.
Thank you, Representative McCune. Representative Iacona?
Thank you. I have a question. I had sent some feedback back through the majority leader. I don't know if she shared it with you or not, but one of the things was about a deadline to report. And I had just, I think, thrown out a suggestion of September, October. I don't believe in forming committees and then not having a working objective as to when you're going to turn in a work product. So what's your goal here?
2034.
No, what's your realistic goal?
I think, well, depending on how quickly we get a committee together, I think realistically, I had been thinking of September, October, but it took longer than I expected for this committee to form. So it might be more like October, November.
Okay, well, so then let's go with October, because from a process standpoint, our session ends and
Sure,
then your work
fine.
would be done. Okay, so you want to end.
Well, I think ideally what that would mean is a report would then outline what the next steps are.
Okay, so your intention is to have an outlined report to give to the RTM at our October meeting.
Correct.
Would that be fair? Okay. The stuff that you want to pursue, is it legal? My understanding is sections of what you're looking to do are illegal, and we would
Such
need.
as?
Well, that we don't have, we would need an exemption from the state. We need special legislation if we wanted to run our own utility.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not legal. You need to get an,
Well,
need to
I
pursue
think
getting.
shooting ideas now, shooting
No,
down
no.
ideas now is not the way to go about this. I think I want to explore these things. It might not work.
Okay, Representative Kuhn, I'm not trying to be combative.
It's
I'm-
Kuhn,
I'm,
thank you.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm not trying to be combative. I'm asking for clarifying points on certain things. The other questions I have are, I thought that we already had committees set up in town that handle these types of things. Why couldn't they be approached and asked and charged to handle these opportunities?
Because I felt that having the legislative teeth in it would be more important than just an appointed body.
Okay. I'm not sure that I'm in favor of forming this committee for the simple fact that I don't think that we are the appropriate body to be handling it. This is a state issue that should be handled by our state delegation. I would certainly be in favor of a sense of the body resolution, even though I really don't like those either. That was bipartisan, that encouraged our state delegation to pursue all of these things, because I really think that's their wheelhouse and not our wheelhouse. I think that we are stepping out of our wheelhouse. I think this is a little bit of an overreach on our end. Although I appreciate that you want to tackle this and handle it, and I respect that. But for me, this is a state issue. So
Well, we don't know what the issue is, first of all, and that's the point of the committee, is to find various issues and see if there are various ways. So it could be having to tackle some state issues with the utilities. The community energy aggregation, in fact, does require legislation at the state level. And I've already discussed it with some of our legislators. I've identified the right person who heads up the Energy Committee, and he just so happens to be my brother-in-law's friend from Yale. So we're identifying the right people. It may not work, but I think I think by not doing something here, it really misses an opportunity. And I think by doing something legislatively on the town level to create momentum to perhaps get the state to pass community energy aggregation. It's not just going to be Fairfield who does it. There are 4 other communities who have passed it in the past. And I know of a couple of other that I'm pretty sure I can get on board, people that I know. So by generating at the community level the momentum to get this done at the state level. I think that's really important. That's kind of the way it happened in New Hampshire.
I shared my opinion on how I think best to done. You disagree with me, and I respect that, and I wish you much luck.
Thank you, Representative Parham.
Cindy Parham, District 2. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing, you're a freshman member of our RTM, and to have the wherewithal to come up with this creative idea and to share resources with our town residents is to be commended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Parham. Representative Zesma.
Liz Esma, District 4. I want to thank you again, Representative Kuhn, for the work you've done on this and the initiative that it took to identify an issue that the whole town and the whole state, has been talking about. I also, for the record, just wanted to confirm that the exchange of information about this committee, I did pass Representative Iacono's suggestions on, and then over the 2 days between February 14th and 16th, she and I exchanged emails where we discussed moving the timeline for a report, the process by which to form and then populate the committee. So I can forward our email chain to the entire body through the moderator, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Representative Zesma. Representative Gerber.
Hey, thanks, John, for coming up with this idea and stepping up to lead it. I think this is going to be a really interesting test case. I haven't been on a committee that's done anything remotely like this. Could be incredibly interesting and productive, but not for the faint of heart. I mean, if people really want to get nerdy and dive in, it could be really productive. I don't really see the downside at all, but the upside is, not just at the state level. There's a lot of things that do come our way and can come our way. Some of them, related to solar, although there's been a moratorium on that for a while. Other things, these are expenses that we ultimately, are asked to approve on some of this stuff. And I think it'll be kind of cool to be a bit tighter with the Sustainable Energy Task Force and understand what they're thinking as well. They're a huge resource. And then by the time things come our way, or for some reason don't come our way, we're better educated and we know a fair amount more about what we're actually approving and whether or not there were better alternatives. Thanks.
I also want to add that, we're facing a lot of costs with the schools coming up with the HVAC and that sort of thing. And I know I threw out an idea about this, thermo power, PPV, this company that I'd come across, and Sal, I guess I got involved with that, and that didn't work out, but it was worth a try. And so if you want to see if we can save some money either for the town or for the individual ratepayers, I don't see why you wouldn't do this.
Representative Gill, I think was quicker, sorry.
Hi, Representative Kuhn, Hannah Gale, District, is that your name? Wait,
Kuhn. Yeah.
Kuhn.
Like the baseball commissioner.
I got it.
Barry Kuhn, another sports reference.
Not like the fullback
Another
John
sports
Kuhn.
reference. I just, I actually am intrigued by what you're saying. I like out of the box ideas and the out of the box idea of the microgrid for natural gas for new businesses. That's just really interesting to me. And I just, what comes to mind is that fuel cell on top of Whole Foods and how much money they save from like having that fuel cell there. And, I sort of have a prejudice that I think, fuel cells really should be looked at a lot more. And I'd be interested in supporting the possibility of looking at fuel cells for the town.
My approach is all of the above.
Thank you, Representative Gill. Representative McCormick.
Thank you, Representative McCormick, District 2. Thank you for your thinking outside the box. I do have concerns about a legislative body essentially putting together a a think tank, because that's what I kind of think of what this would be. And I do believe that the Sustainability Task Force would be in a more appropriate place for these types of ideas to be pursued. I'm not sure if that's part of their charge or what have you, but to me, it just seems a little inappropriate for a legislative body to form a committee to basically research ideas on things that the state would need to ultimately support and help us with. I don't think we as a town body have any power to do anything as we sit here today. And because of that, it seems to me, I don't disagree that the work could be interesting and could be done within the town. I don't think that it belongs before the RTM or in an RTM committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCormick. Representative McCabe?
Representative McCabe, District 4, thank you through the moderator. I just wanted to add, I know I've been on a lot of calls with you, John, and I'm excited to participate in this group where we did launch it, in part because I think to the point of Representative McCormick, working in concert with the Energy Task Force is great because there are going to be opportunities that are going to be resting in the realm of ordinance. And so we're a complement to the work that they're doing. And while there are going to be issues that will require legislative action at the state level, we would be asking for enabling legislation that would allow individual towns to then pass ordinances like the one that you mentioned with consumers being able to purchase energy. So I think my understanding is that this group would be looking at the issue through the lens of what a legislative body in a town can do. And I think that's really innovative and exciting work, and looking forward to doing some thinking on it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's well stated.
Thank you, Representative McCabe. Representative Steele?
Jeff Steele, District 2. John, I like the initiative and I like the idea, and I'm going to be honest, I'm intrigued by it. As Hannah said she is. I look at the Sustainable Fairfield Task Force. I think that does a lot of this. And we talk about renewable energy. We're looking at geothermal, solar, hydro. I mean, probably not hydro, but, biofuels, all sorts of different renewable energy. I think that's tasked there. So all the time I've been on the RTM, I've thought of different committees I could form for various ideas and causes. But I always step back thinking, just because it might be my cause, it's not necessarily everyone else's. And I'm not saying your cause is only your cause, but is this the place to do it? And I'm not sure it is. Maybe it is, but I'm not convinced yet, because we have another body that is tackling all these. And then it's duplicative and there's overlap. And what are we really trying to do? And you mentioned some ideas here. There's no reason we shouldn't pursue Windsor, Connecticut, and Exeter's ideas of aggregating power. I mean, let's look into it. I'm not sure that's our task to do it. And, that's all. I'm kind of wavering on if this would be the right. It sounds like it's a half-baked idea, not a bad idea. And your intent is I think good. And who would not want power rates to come down? I just don't know how much we can do there. But I mean, I think the Sustainable Task Force is tackling a lot of these renewable issues that we can bring in here. And this whole world is going more sustainable. There's no doubt. Just don't, as Karen may have said, kind of think tanky, which is okay. So maybe this is more a commentary than a yes or no.
I've discussed it with Sustainable Fairfield, and I would say we're complementary. They are not working on community energy aggregation, which is something that the town body would need to do if it was going to happen. It might not have been generated by the town body, but it has to be passed by the town body.
Thank you, Representative Steele. Representative Pistilli?
Thank you. Sharon Basili, District 3. Yeah, so my understanding is Sustainable Fairfield, like they are looking into renewable energy technology as it comes on board and encouraging people to sign up for it. But they don't have influence as to what we do as a municipality in total. And I understand about, this is something that I might only be interested in, not everyone else, but how many ratepayers do we have in Fairfield? Is there any building in Fairfield that doesn't have electricity? How many ratepayers do we have? Do you know?
Don't know offhand.
I think, yeah.
The committee might be able to find that out.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, we know like with sewer that we have 12,000 or something like that around residential. So we probably have, if I had to guess, we probably have 25,000 ratepayers. So I think that's a substantial amount of the town. So thanks for taking this on. I support it.
Thank you, Representative Pistilli. Anybody else? Okay, nobody on WebEx. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. That's our last item tonight, so we can adjourn to our committees. Everybody should dial in who's not here. And see everybody on Thursday again. And don't need to.